Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of On the Move. Today we've got J.R. Robles, horse trainer from Oregon, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you've kind of dabbled in a few worlds in your early career. I kind
Yes.
of knew you through the horsemanship world. I know you've done Road to the Horse. Now, if you look on your social media, you would
Yeah.
think, man, this guy's just a full blown reining trainer. What do you mean Road to the Horse? What do you mean all this other stuff, right? So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool. I know you've got a pretty unique journey, but I appreciate you making the time to talk to me today. And yeah, I want to dig into it because I think you have a pretty unique situation and how you got to where you are. And I
Yes,
don't
sir.
know the whole story. So I kind of want to just start at the beginning and go from there. So
Yeah.
I know in the beginning, you you were like in adulthood with a desk job, right? Like you kind of got
Yeah.
into horses later in life, right?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Suit and tie every day. Sitting at a desk and working at hospitals with doctors, and so it was kind of
Yeah.
a, a different situation for me. So yeah, I did
Did
definitely
did
a
you
desk
go
job.
to did you go to college for that, or what was your job exactly?
So I did. I went to the University of Oregon in here in Eugene, Oregon, and was there for 4 years, and I got my degree in psychology and a minor in sociology. And so my plan was to help people and teach and be some sort of counselor, some sort of therapist. That was kind of my long term plan was to help people in some sort of way, shape, or form. That was my plan.
Gotcha.
And so yeah, I was working as I'm also bilingual, so I was working as a bilingual patient advocate. So I'd be at the hospitals working with patients and doctors and translating um, from the doctors to the patients whatever diagnosis, whatever thing that needed to be translated with the patient. So it was some of it was pretty heavy stuff. So
Sure. Yeah, I bet that's a job that could probably weigh on you if you
yeah,
stayed in it long term, I bet.
yes, sir, yes, sir. So yeah, horses was never even a thought in my mind. I was 23, yeah, 23 when I graduated. So, um, my family was never into horses. My mom was never into horses. I think back in the day, grandparents and uncles, they had horses, but it was more for work in Mexico and a small ranch. They would use, it was livestock for work, not necessarily training. And so for me, it wasn't something I was ever really around anyway. So for me to say that that was my future, it was never ever a thought in my mind.
Gotcha. Did you grow up in Oregon or did your parents immigrate? Like, how'd the family get from Mexico up there?
So I was born in Portland, Oregon. So basically, my whole life I've been in Oregon. I when I was probably close to a year old, my mom and I went back to Mexico, and I was there till I was probably about 4 or 5. So my first language was Spanish. I didn't know
Hmm.
English at all till I came here till I came back to the States, and then I started learning English, and so yeah, I spent 4 or 5 years in Mexico with my mom and my grandmother, who actually both of them raised me, and so when we came back to the States, we came back to Oregon, and we've been in Oregon ever since.
Okay, great. And I see, are you a Ducks fan?
I'm a Ducks fan, absolutely, yeah. So that's my alma mater, so
Yeah,
for sure.
cool, cool. So I didn't know the exact places, but I knew you'd kind of gone to college and worked kind of a white collar job and everything before you got into
Mm,
horses.
yeah,
But just to add context to our conversation, I remember you getting interviewed, I mean, years and years ago. And this is when you would have just been a couple years into the horse deal. And
yeah.
you were actually a pretty big inspiration for me
Oh wow,
because
I don't
so
know.
I went, I'm here in Blacksburg, Virginia. Uh, I went and I have a systems engineering degree from Virginia Tech. And
Awesome.
so I went and I worked in software engineering for 4 years after school. And about 2 years into that, I started my horse training business, like, part-time, and
Yeah.
right before I, like, kinda took the leap and started taking outside horses, I'd grown up with horses, and, I had horses involved in my life in college, and then I moved away and they weren't involved in my life, and then I knew that that was something I needed to go back to. But
Yeah.
I listened to an interview with you and I was like, "Oh, man, this guy," like, I at least, like, come from the horse industry, like, my mom was a
Yeah.
trainer, and I was like, "This guy, this is so cool that he was able to kinda just get into it out of the blue," and I was like, "Man, if there's some guy out on the West Coast doing all this stuff, like, surely I can have the balls to go do this, right?"
Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
there was a bunch of things. It was, to me, looking back now, it was like kind of almost all these signs from God, like take this leap,
Yep.
take this leap. But I want you to know your interview talking about that was one of those signs
Wow.
for me. And this would have been like,
Wow.
I don't know, 5 years ago, maybe.
Okay. Oh man, that's cool. I did not know that. So I appreciate you saying that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And then now, we have a training business, me and my wife, and
That's
it's
awesome.
growing and we're doing the thing. And yeah, never been happier chasing what we're
I
doing
love
now.
I
So
love that.
it's been cool. So all right. So, and one other thing before we jump
Yeah.
ahead, because you mentioned the
Yeah.
bilingual, and I know this is
Yeah.
skipping around. I feel like that's a real advantage to be bilingual in the horse industry. Does that help a lot?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, man. It's been funny because I there'll be times, and I've been in different training facilities at different training facilities where I start talking Spanish to somebody for whatever reason, just because I'm always super talkative. I'm always trying to be friendly, at least no matter who it is, where we're at. I'm always trying to just say hi to people, and I love meeting new people. So when I've been at facilities where I start talking Spanish to somebody, and the head trainer there will kind of look over at me and they'll be like, when did you learn Spanish? Or how do you know Spanish? And so then I'm like, I look at him and I'm like, because I'm Mexican. And then they're like, oh, dang. Like, and so it's just funny because um, I start speaking Spanish and nobody would guess and some people obviously can tell, but other people can't, that I have a Latin heritage, a Hispanic heritage.
oh sure,
Um,
yep.
and so it's just funny when I start speaking Spanish. So yeah, but it's definitely an advantage because I've been in situations before where I don't know, between people, even at a show or something, something needs to happen, and I can talk with different people, or even outside of the horse world where we're just running into people on
Hmm.
the street and someone needs help, and being able to just translate for them. It's super helpful. Absolutely.
Yeah. Did it ever help? Have you ever had to go and teach in Spanish for the horse deal?
Um, you know, I've had situations where I've been approached to teach or to talk with people in a very small situation, not like a clinic situation, but maybe two people needed some
Sure.
help with something. So I would teach. Um, I This is going to sound funny, but about about 6 years ago, the Discovery Channel Espanol wanted to do a reality show on. They were doing a reality show for a gentleman that traveled the country and was visiting interesting people, and so they chose me to come in and do an interview with. And then it ended up turning from a 2-minute interview to the whole episode was just on me. So it was
Oh,
kind of funny
cool.
that they traveled from Florida and from New York, producers to come and film the episode. And so I was working with the host of the show and teaching him stuff with horses because he had never been around horses. And so being able to teach him in Spanish was kind of neat, with cameras around and using terminology that I would normally use in English, using it in Spanish. And so it was a cool situation to be able to do that. So when I watch the episode and I'm directing the host of the show to position his body a certain way, to lunge the horse a certain way, to ride a certain way, and doing it in Spanish, I was like, I never pictured myself doing that. So it was kind of neat seeing that, from outside looking in. It was pretty neat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty unique opportunity. So,
Yeah.
it's cool where you had that background.
Yeah. absolutely. And so that's one of those moments that in my life, another moment that I never like dreamt, I could never even dream of, that the Discovery Channel would be like, "Hey, let's do something on you," and then that turned into, let's do a like a whole reality show just on my life. And so now that's the next project, is doing a reality show on me. And so that's going to be kind of cool to go through those steps and do that. So I'm excited for that to happen. They've filmed some stuff at Road to the Horse, and they're supposed to be filming stuff now at the new barn that we just moved into. And so they're kind of trying to film my life. I don't know. It's just it's a
Yeah,
bizarre
that's
thing. Again,
wild.
I never something that I had ever even thought would be a part of this when I got into horses. Uh, it would have to be 14 and a half years now that I got into horses.
Wow. Wow,
Yeah.
that's cool. Okay, so let's rewind back and get
Yeah.
back there. So
Yeah.
you're 23 years old. You're like, I'm gonna come out here. I'm working towards whatever. Um, and that that's kind of always tough. Like, I wouldn't say I resented going to college, but also if I could rewind and tell 18-year-old me, like, hey, you're gonna be happiest training horses,
Yeah.
there's probably no reason to go to college in my opinion. And
Yeah.
uh, you I imagine, maybe I'm going to speculate that you were kind of in a similar situation. You came out of college and you're like, well, they told me to get a degree,
Yeah.
and now I'm just out in the world. I guess I got to like feed myself and clothe myself, and
Yeah.
like you're almost like a 23-year-old, but you don't know how to function in the
Yeah.
real world still.
Yeah. It was definitely and I was doing everything, not not necessarily to appease my mom, but it was definitely something from my mom that was a dream
Hmm.
for me to have a great job through the state where I was, 401k, health benefits,
That was
suit and tie.
exactly. So my mom, being a horse trainer, her exact dream for me was steady pay, 9 to 5,
Yep.
401k match, all
Yep.
401k match, all the stuff,
Yep.
right? So I totally get where you're coming from there.
And that's where for me that was a driving force to, let's go to college, let's go down this path. And then so
Hmm.
when I graduated, I was like, okay, well, now I have my degree, so I can go out in the real world. And my thought was, my job, I'll end up in some sort of like townhouse in the middle of some sort of neighborhood with a wife and kids, maybe a little white picket fence, and
Yeah,
just kind of that, that was the dream.
do
And
what you're supposed to do.
yeah, that's what I was thinking. That's the social norm. That's what my mom wanted. And so that was where my mind was at
Man,
23 when I got out of college. And I went the complete opposite direction
yeah,
of all that after
that's
college.
crazy, man. Like, I know I already said it, but I just feel like there were so many parallels with you and me at that stage of our life. I can totally relate to all of that.
I love that. And
Yeah.
it's hard because you love your parents, you respect your parents, and you want to do what they're asking you to do. And it's not that it was ever like a bad thing, or that it was pushed upon us, or that pushed upon me at least, and
Hmm.
that my mom was like, you have to do this. It was more so, man, I know this has been a dream for my mom.
Hmm.
She's been working her butt off to raise three kids. Like, yeah, this is a way for me to like give back to my mom and say thank you to my mom for giving us the life that she gave us up to that point.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's like, yeah, let's go down this route. But uh, it quickly turned into something completely different.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're working at the hospital,
Hmm.
kind of figuring out our life, wanting to, do the typical American dream deal.
Yep.
Where where does the horse come into the picture?
So I met a girl. Of course, that's how it starts. I met a girl that I didn't know she was into horses. I think we had been hanging out for, I don't know, it had to have been a few weeks at least. And we were hanging out, and she said, I gotta wake up early tomorrow. And so I was like, well, what for? What's going on? And she's, well, I work with horses, and me. I was like, oh, I love horses, but I'd never, I'd never
Yeah.
been around.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, would you like to come out to the barn? I was like, I'd love to. That's awesome. It sounds fun. And so the next morning, I drive out to the barn that she's at, and I remember showing up in probably like the dirtiest Nikes that I had at the time because I didn't own boots, and so I remember showing up to the barn, and she said, "I'm going to feed some horses. I'm going to open up." It was a big, long barn, and they had two sliding doors on each end. And she's like, "I'm going to open up a sliding door, and all the horses are going to run in." And I was like, "All right, cool." So she goes and opens the door, and I kind of stay in the middle of the barn in the aisleway. And so she opens the door, and then 14, 15 horses come running in the hallway. And I've seen Western movies before where a big stampede of horses is just coming running. And in my mind, I felt the ground shaking. And so I was scared out of my mind. So I ran towards the wall that was like 5 feet away, and I climbed up on the bars of one of the stalls. And so I'm clinging off the floor, terrified that I'm going to get trampled by these horses. And the horses come in and they kind of just walk around. And I remember the girl looking at me and giving me a face like, "What are you doing?" And she kind of put her hands up, and they all went back into their stalls. And so I crawl off the stall wall, super embarrassed. And she was like, "You don't know anything about horses, do you?" And I was like, "Actually, no, I don't." And so she said, "Do you want to learn?" I said, "Yeah, absolutely." So she handed me a pick, and we started cleaning stalls. And it was legitimately in that moment, I was like, I don't know what this is, but this is fun, and I love it.
Hmm.
I want more of it. I don't know what it is. And so that's legitimately where I was like, this is cool. Let's kind of go down this path and see what happens.
Yeah.
That was I was at that point I was 24, about to be 25. So
Okay.
that was my first experience with a training barn with horses of that nature. It wasn't just like, I'm sure I was probably 3 years old, 4 years old in Mexico around uncles that were probably using a mule or some sort of something, a
Yeah.
horse or a donkey to carry, sacks of food or whatever to go somewhere from town to town. But as far as like to say that, a training facility like this, I'd never been around it.
Yeah. Looking back now that you have the context and you've dealt with horses and kind of delved into it, can you say now in retrospect what you feel like you were maybe attracted to?
Um, I I still don't know. Even now, I feel like it's almost it's something that's, it sounds super cliche, but it's almost like a poetic feeling of life, a lifestyle, a culture that there's some sort of freedom to it. There's some sort of um, raw, true, genuine
Mm.
feel that you just don't get being around people.
Mhm.
And even with like, I have a dog that goes with me just about everywhere, and I've always been an animal person. I've always loved my dogs, my, well, now my horses. But there was something about just being around the animals that for me was very therapeutic.
Mhm.
And there's a part of my life that I haven't necessarily talked about. I think I talked about it in one podcast, and it was always for me something that I was always a little worried to talk about, just because I was afraid of people's perception or people's thought of me if I talked about it too much, just because my life has changed so much. And I can talk about it here just because I feel like, again, my life is at a point where it's kind of an open book. And so in college, I definitely had a I had a bad temper, a really short fuse. And um, I was always getting in trouble with getting in fist fights at in college for just because I was so triggered so quickly. And you would think that what I went to school for, I would have been able to figure out, well, why is
Hmm.
this happening? And it wasn't until after college that towards the end of college, after college, that I actually was able to figure out why. And it was definitely watching my or seeing my mom go through um, domestic abuse, and seeing my mom go through that, physically get hurt, where I was always kind of chasing that suppressed feeling that because I couldn't do anything when it happened. I was 13, 14 when I saw it happen. And so when I got older and I was bigger and I was stronger, anything that happened, I was always like, I felt so combative. I felt like I had to defend myself because
Mhm.
that 13, 14-year-old kid couldn't do it, couldn't defend my mom. And so my mom is definitely my rock, my everything through life. And so for me, I felt like with horses, I going back to that question is I got to the point with horses where it felt freeing. It felt therapeutic where I could be around these big animals and I didn't have to feel like I had to defend myself. I didn't feel like I had to, fear for my life, even though they were big. And I was a little bit fearful of them because they were so big and I had never been around them. And I learned pretty quickly that even when I got frustrated, that I couldn't fix the issue by being angry. I couldn't fix the
Mhm.
issue by
Mhm.
trying to bully these horses around. And so for me, I would say that horses actually saved my life because I was probably going to go down a path where I was probably going to be out with my buddies or something at a bar and maybe get in a fight where I would have done something dumb that would have been irreversible, and then that would have been my life for the rest of my life. And so it's interesting now where things happen in my life where people see me and then they're like, "Oh, he's the nice guy." Like he's the and I take that all day every day because I've worked so hard on myself to not go down that path again. And there's self-talk, there's internal talk for myself that has helped with that. But again, going back to the animals, I feel like the horses have taught me so much patience, and just putting myself in other people's shoes when things aren't necessarily the most positive and the energy isn't great. Sometimes I'm like, why is this person doing that? Why is this person saying that? And it's helped me. And same thing with the horse. When a horse does something, well, why is this horse doing that? Why is it responding to me this way? Why is it, is it because that's his personality, or is that created by humans? And so being able to kind of navigate through that
Mm.
with horses like I did with people was I think why people sometimes assume that I've been around horses my whole life was because I was able to navigate through that especially that tough process, because at the beginning, as you know, we weren't getting the easy horses. We were getting some rank horses, some tough horses. And it was like, how do we navigate that without making the situation worse?
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like I had to learn, because in my mind, I was like, this is what I have to go through in order to get the nicer horses. And so sure enough, I took on some tough horses, and some horses at the beginning that I probably had no business being around. And the fact that I haven't gotten hurt, that I didn't get hurt worse at that time in my career, is still kind of beyond me. But again, being able to navigate the situation where I could feel maybe something bad's going to happen. So maybe stepping away, or my body language was a little different because I knew the horse was starting to go down a different path mentally and physically. And so for me, I think that, so actually answering your question, what it was about horses, I think that's kind of part of a huge part of it too, is where um, I felt something in myself shift in my
Mhm.
life where I was like, this is the path that I'm supposed to go down. And I've always been a man of faith. I've always, I've always believed in God, and things happen for a reason. And so for me, when it happened this way, I was like, I don't know what this is, but I know that this is where I'm supposed to be. And as my career has continued, there are things that remind me I am on the right path.
Yeah.
And so, but initially that was a big part of it was, um, I feel like I was going to go down a pretty dark, bad path had I not gone into horses. And so when I do talk about it, the few times that I do talk about my past in that sense, where, and it wasn't even in high school where I was like that, because if people knew me from high school, people would be like, oh, he's the nice guy. People from middle school, oh, he's the nice guy. But then there was a section of my time in college, again, where I was bigger, where I was stronger, and I wasn't letting people get away with slick comments or just weird, funny things that normally in the past I would just laugh it off. So it was only just a
Mm.
small part of my life that part of me came out, and I
But
didn't
it
know
was
was
always there. You were just
correct.
finally able to act on it.
Correct. And so that's where I think it got to the point where it was a little bit scary. And it was even to the point where my friends were like, we don't want to hang out with you because all you're
Mm,
doing is causing trouble. All you're out there looking for trouble. Like you're just looking for it. And I think it was to the point where I was looking for it. And I think I was just searching for that trying to recreate that moment that I had when I was 13, 14, where I couldn't help my mom. And now it's like, let me try to recreate that so I can fix it, and in my mind thinking I was going to fix it, but obviously that was never going to be the case. And so, yeah, so now my life is very different where I still get stressed. I still get irritated. I still get annoyed. I still get frustrated. I'm not saying that that's gone away at all, but as far as like to the point where I'm thinking like, man, I'm going to go down a different path. It's not there anymore. And I have, uh, we can talk about them too, but I have some really good friends around me that were clients and now turned into really good friends that have helped during that situation. Cause I've talked to them about those moments in my life. And, whenever they see me get a little frustrated, they kind of bring me back a little bit. And they're like, hey, like, it's not a big deal. And so I think having people around you that, um, can do that for you, I think is huge. So,
yeah,
so yeah, that was the beginning of it.
yeah. Well, and I mean, shout out to your friends in college who were actually willing to have that conversation with you in the beginning, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that takes a lot, especially at that age in life and in college where it's just like, well, we're surrounded by all our peers. It's pretty easy
Yeah.
to just go get new friends and like bail on
Yeah.
people at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
the guys that I've been friends with in college, it's I think it's rare. I think you can have one good friend that you've had for a long time, but there's five of us, and we go back to middle school. We went to high school. We went to college together, and we even lived together after college. And so I've known these guys for 25 years plus. And so they've known the ups and downs of my life, and so I think that's what made it easier for them to have those conversations and be like, "Hey, man, like you can't, you can't be doing that."
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. It's definitely rare. I'm fortunate enough I'm in a similar situation where I've got guys I've known since I was like 12, 13 years old that have always kind of been my main nucleus of friends, and they're still probably the main people I communicate with socially to this
yeah,
day. And we're all there's kind of this understanding that you can field the 3 a.m. phone calls and stuff like that,
yeah,
when stuff
yeah,
goes down or you really need support or like you're saying, if you've got to just sit down and really be honest with somebody about,
yeah.
hey, this is like, it's not all going to be sugar cookies. Like this isn't acquaintances.
No,
You're in a
yeah,
bad spot and I got to be honest with you about the bad spot you're in.
yeah, yeah. It's to the point where, they're I would consider them family, brothers, not just friends, not just best friends. They're definitely brothers that I've had forever. So, yeah, it's a blessing to have people like that in your life for sure.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Cool, man. Well, that's awesome, and it's cool that you have all that perspective now. I'm sure the background with your degree and just where one you went through that in college, but two you were in a place where you were already kind of thinking about all that stuff, like
Yeah,
how do people regulate emotions, how do people
yeah,
handle this, what leads to this line of thinking. I'm sure that set you up great for horses. Now,
yeah,
as I say this a lot, there's a lot of horse academics, there's very few horse practitioners. So,
yeah,
knowing all that stuff and being able
yeah,
to apply all that stuff with a 1,200-pound animal or whatever it is are very different. Um,
yeah,
cool. So, you go to the barn, don't even have a pair of boots, just trying not to get run over, and you you're still working at the hospital. Where do we go from there? Was it like pretty instantly? Were you like, "Oh, okay, maybe I'm gonna be like now instead of the townhouse, we're gonna have like a little ranchette, like on 10 acres and have a couple horses in the backyard." Is that what you're thinking
that
now?
that's kind of where my mind was at. But I didn't know like how I was going to go from plan A now to a completely different plan B. I didn't
Hmm.
know how that was going to happen, but I remember I quit my job at the hospital. And I remember at the time I was
With
in
the
a
intention
relationship
of going to train horses?
into
Or
horses.
okay.
Yep,
Yeah,
completely going to horses.
I think I would really love to hear your thought process going into that jump. Was it like you had to think about it? You had, because you don't even really like know this industry.
No, not
You
at
know what I
all.
mean?
And
Like you have to figure out like, okay, how does one make money with horses
yep,
before you ever make this leap? So can you talk about like the thought process before you go
yeah.
into the training?
So I at that time I ended up I got in a relationship with somebody that was not in the horses, and I remember I had gotten a horse. This was around 2010 when the economy had kind of hit and people were giving horses away on Craigslist and
Yeah.
things were
Yeah.
things were very cheap.
So you've
And
moved
I
on from the other girl at this point,
correct,
right?
yeah,
But
yeah,
you've
yeah.
learned some stuff, learned to how to maybe you at least know where to like go and buy a horse and then like how to feed it and stuff.
Correct. I knew how to. I think at that point I knew how to lunge a horse. I think that was my extent. And she loved Clinton Anderson,
Okay.
and so she had videos. The girl that I initially met that I was trying to impress that knew horses, and she had Clint Anderson videos, and I remember she let me borrow them, and those were the videos I was watching, and so everything I knew at the time was just based off of what I was seeing Clint Anderson do on these like tutorial videos that he was putting out,
Right.
and so I I was kind of still kind of in limbo, like I'm gonna give up horses, I'm not gonna give up horses, and that's when I got into this relationship with this girl, and I got the free horse. And so my time was now not devoted to the relationship. My time was now devoted to the free horse that I got on Craigslist
Heck yeah.
that the gal said, "Oh yeah, this is a gelding. He's a 2-year-old gelding and you can have him for free." And so I went, picked up the gelding. I had to borrow somebody's truck and trailer because I didn't own a truck and trailer. And I remember picking up the horse, dropping it off at a barn that I was renting a stall at, and I remember like 3 weeks later, I get a call from the barn owner saying, "Hey, you need to pick up your horse because he's mounting the mares." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" So I remember showing up to the barn and they couldn't catch this horse, and he's chasing a bunch of the mares because I had him out in the field thinking he was a gelding, and sure enough, he was a crypt orchid, and
Oh, okay.
so so that's why the lady, and that was my short introduction into the horse world. Someone saying, "Yeah, the horse is a gelding," when they knew very well that he was a crypt orchid, and
Hmm.
so I took the horse
I
away
tell
from.
people, you know, horse trading's the second oldest profession in the
Yep.
world. So welcome to the
Yes,
industry, JR.
that was my welcome into the world of horses. I was like, "Oh, dang, that sucks." And so, and I got him for free, so it's not like I really could complain to the gal and say
Hmm.
anything. And so again, so now my time was away from the relationship and all into that one horse. And I still remember to this day the girl saying, um, "Why don't you just give up horses? Like you didn't grow up in horses. This isn't your family's not into horses. Now you're just kind of becoming obsessed with it. It's not even just a hobby anymore. You're just being unrealistic." And I remember that was like, let me prove to you that
Mm.
it's more than just that. And so that relationship ended pretty dang quickly. And that at that point, my time was being spent more with that horse. Where as soon as I was leaving my job, still at the hospital, I was driving to the barn in my suit and tie to get to that horse because I was like, I needed to spend more time with that horse. And then I think about 2 months went by, and somebody came by the barn and said, "Is that horse for sale?" And I was like, "Well, no," because he was my first horse, and so I was really attached to him. At that
Mm.
point, I was attached. And he goes, "Well, I'll give you $6,000 for it." And I was like, "Yep, here you go. You can
Mm.
have
Less
six
attached.
thousand dollars." And so, and that was where the business side of me was like, "There's money in this. Like, even though the economy isn't really good, there are people that are still buying horses." And so, of course, I sold the horse. I had 6 grand. I was like, I could live off of 6 grand for a little bit. So I, I quit the job and said, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get. I started getting horses for free or for really cheap, at the local auctions or
Yeah.
on Craigslist, and I
Which is
started
cool
selling.
because that'd be hard to do today.
It would be. It would be absolutely hard to do because you to get a decent horse right now. I mean, at least in our world, I mean, you're not finding anything under $9,000, $10,000 that would be worth investing into, and so it's kind of hard to. It would be very hard to do that now, and
Yeah.
even if you're looking at a trail horse, I've seen horses that are 10, 15 years old that maybe didn't do anything, and people are asking $10,000 for. And I'm like, man, that wasn't the case
Yep.
14, 15 years ago.
Mhm.
And so I feel like I got into the horse world at just at the right time
Yeah.
where that was happening and I was able to do that. And so I remember doing that for a while where I was like, man, this is kind of cool. I can make a little bit of money. And then of course, came in the vet bills, the farrier bill, and I was like, man, this is getting kind of expensive. And I was like, well, how do I reduce that? Again, the business side of me was like, how do I reduce
Mhm.
that overhead? And so I started learning how to do farrier work. So I followed a farrier for a while and learned how to trim horses' feet, not even shoe horses, just to trim horses' feet. So
Yep.
I bought my little set of farrier tools, and so I started trimming my own horses so I could save myself $50, $60 every few weeks.
Yep. And that goes a
And
long way. Like being
it
able to
does, especially at
just
that
trim
time.
your own horses, which is a skill you can really, I'm not going to say master because people spend a lifetime trying to master it, but you can get proficient in that in like 6 months probably.
Absolutely. And that's what I did to the point where I was like, shoot, now I'm going to advertise myself as a farrier too. And at this point, I'm 2 years into my horse career. And now I'm not only training horses that I got on Craigslist for free, I'm also a farrier. And at that point, I still didn't have a truck. I had this little Honda that I was driving around, and I had my farrier tools in the back of the Honda.
Hmm.
And I was, driving 2 hours just to go trim two horses. So I was making $100 and spending $30 on fuel. But I was like, okay, well, there's a $70 profit that I just made
Yeah.
driving, and then it got to the point where I was like, well, let me do where I travel, train a horse, make, and I think at that point I was to now to even think about charging that. I think I was charging $25 a ride on some of these rank horses,
Oh, wow.
plus $50 for a trim. So
Yeah. You're
I'm like a
just a
one-stop
charity
shop.
guy.
And I remember my younger brother going with me because he was my little brother. So wherever I went, he wanted to go. So I was like, man, this is free labor. I'd buy him lunch and he'd help me out with what I needed help with. And so I remember, and I know that some people probably felt bad for me when I was showing up to their place and they were saying like, this is the horse you have to work with today. Because halfway through, people would bring me like a sandwich or some
Hmm.
chips or a soda or something and feed me in between me, wrestling their horses and trimming their horses. And I was like, this is kind of like but in my mind, I was like, this is fun. Like, I didn't know
Yeah.
why I was busting my butt and traveling and, but I was like, this is fun. Like, I just thought that no matter what, I could do something with it. I'm like, I just got to figure out a way to make a legit business out of it. And then, I think I saw again on Craigslist. Craigslist was my place. Like that was where I was doing a lot of business. And I
Yeah.
remember on Craigslist somebody had posted looking for a trainer to train out of our facility. And I think I had been traveling for about a year now, and I was getting tired of getting in my car and traveling and making a little bit of money, enough to pay rent, enough to eat and stuff.
Hmm.
And I remember thinking, I'm going to apply. And so I applied and I sent in my short resume of horses and stuff. And I remember I got the call. So here is where there was this point in my life where I was like, either I really, really want this, or you have to go back to working
Yeah.
for the state.
Yeah.
And
Because you've done like, at this point, you've done the horse equivalent of like, I'm 25 and I got to go like backpack around Europe before I get married. Something like that.
absolutely,
Yeah.
that's
Like
exactly
you're
what I was
really
doing.
not, your farrier tools and, changing the oil in your Honda, like there's not a lot of overhead. You're not really bought in.
No,
Yeah.
no. And at that point, there was no way that I was going to be able to. And so I think it got to the point, and I was trying not to tell my mom that financially it was not working out, because my mom was like, but you went to college, you got your
Yeah.
degree, and
Yeah, so
you
how did
went
that
through all.
all go over when you quit the hospital job?
So my mom, bless my mom's heart, I can't imagine what she truly thought when I told her,
Mhm.
but she was definitely like, why? Like, why are you, you went to college, but my mom has always been, if I'm happy, she doesn't care. She doesn't care what I'm
Mm,
doing as long as I'm happy. She's always asking, Did you eat breakfast today? Did you eat lunch today? Did you get enough sleep?" And so my mom's always just been that type of person that, as long as I'm happy, I'm not doing anything stupid. I'm not, going out and doing things that are hurting people. As long as I'm happy and doing good by society standards, and just as a human being, she's happy.
mhm.
And so when I told her, she was like, "I don't know if that's the best idea, but your degree's always going to be there." So she said, "You're young, try it. And if it doesn't work, you can always go back." And so I had her blessing. And I know that she said that, but I know in the back of her mind, she's like, "I don't know how he's going to make this work." And so that's kind of, we get to that point where I was struggling financially, and I was like, "How am I going to make this work?" And
Yeah.
so
Was there
there's
ever a
this
time you thought about going back?
that point right there.
Yeah. Yeah,
That
you
point
were
right there.
like, "Maybe I just polish up my resume?"
Yep.
Mhm.
Because it was so bad, and this is kind of embarrassing, where I don't like talking about it, but it's funny to talk about now. My brother, who was always with me, I remember we were driving to, I think we were going to go trim a couple horses or something, and we were in this little Honda, and it was summertime, so our windows are down, and the AC probably wasn't working in the car at the time, and so we're driving down the road, and we're coming up to a stoplight, and there was a car that kind of came up next to us, and it was I remember a red convertible, and there was four girls in the car, and they were having a great time, and they're laughing, and they were, to me, like girls that I would probably find attractive at the time. And so me in this little beat down Honda driving down the road and pulling up to this light, I was like, "Oh my gosh." And I remember the brakes were due on my Honda pretty bad, but I
Yeah.
had been putting it off. And so we get to this light, and the wheels just started screeching. They sounded like if you ever hear whales
Oh,
underwater on audio, that's what they sounded like.
yeah.
And
I
so we
totally
pull up to
relate.
this. Oh my gosh, and then I remember hearing the girls laughing, so I'm like, I'm not even gonna look over. So I remember slouching down in my seat, and my brother's cracking up, and then the light turned green, so I took off as fast as I could. And that, I think it was within that same day or the next day, again, we're struggling financially. I'm struggling financially. And there was this place in Portland, Oregon, that you could take in clothing, and they'd give you money for it if it was good clothing.
Mhm.
And so I remember we went, and I had a bunch of garbage bags. And again, I know that if I would have asked my mom for help financially, she would have said, "Here, like, let me help you." But I was at
Mhm.
the point where I was like, "No, like, I made my bed, now I'm going to lay in it."
Yeah.
And so I don't want to have to ask for help, because I'm the one that got myself in this situation. And so I was like, "I'm going to make it work somehow." And so I remember that day we had 3, 4 garbage bags full of clothing, and we went. And so I had already applied for this job on Craigslist for the trainer position, but I hadn't heard back. So I was like, "Man, I got to start selling stuff." And so I remember going into the store, and I think I made like $75, and I was like, "Man, this is not enough." And I remember at that moment, I remember praying and saying, "I need some sort of sign to tell me, because right now the only sign I'm getting is you need to get out of the horse world because it's not working financially."
Yep.
I said, "But I need a sign that tells me, like, no, this is the path you're supposed to be on." And I kid you not, I walked out of the store, opened up the trunk of my car. I was about to throw the bags into the trunk of the car, and I get a phone call, and it was the people with the facility for the training position.
Mhm.
And I was like, Okay, like, this is." I answered the call, and I didn't know who it was at the time, but I answered, and they were like, "Hey, we got your resume. We'd love to meet with you today. Are you available?" And I was like, "I'll be over in like an hour. Don't you worry. Like, I'm headed there." And so went to this place, and it was completely empty. I think they had two horses. And so I was like, so I'm supposed to train these 2 horses? And they said, well, we're looking for someone to lease the facility and train out of here, and you can open it up to people to come and bring you horses for training. And I was like, oh man, like I don't have a following on social
Yeah.
media. I don't, and I think at that point, Facebook and Instagram weren't really, at that point, at least in my eyes, they weren't used how it is now with the
Mhm.
marketing and promoting yourself.
Yeah.
And so I was
To
like,
me,
I don't
2016, 2017 is probably like the genesis of really influencing people via social media.
agreed.
Yeah.
And so now we're talking 2013, 2014. So it was still a little bit before that. And so I said, I don't know how I'm going to make it work, but I said, I prayed for it. I have this opportunity. Let's do it. Let's
Mhm.
roll with it. And so I took on that that position, and it was owned by a property management company. So they were running the facility like an apartment complex. So everybody that was bringing a horse in had to fill out like a 20-page uh, contract about how long, when, the feed, and it was crazy because it was definitely like they were applying for an apartment for their horse. It was a bizarre situation, but it worked at the time.
Mm.
And that's where I started saying, I'm open for horses to come into training. And I think people that I had sold horses to before had reached out to me and said, hey, I have another horse and I like the horse, how you train the horse that we bought. Can we send you another horse? And so slowly I started taking in boarders. I started
Mhm.
taking in training horses. And so at the time, I was doing the feeding. I was cleaning 10, 15 stalls, and then I still had to work 7, 8 horses. So they were long days. And
Mhm.
I was driving probably an hour and 20 minutes one way just to get to this facility. But I
Holy
had my little
smokes.
Honda. Yeah. And so I had my little Honda. So it worked
Dude, you need to be
economically.
sponsored by Honda. You got that thing working.
It worked. It worked for a long time for me. And that little Honda, like it was a trooper because it went through a lot. It saw a lot. And so that was the turning point of like,
Mhm.
I'm either it's gonna work here, or I just got to go back because I got to be able to feed myself. I got to be able to live. Like
Yeah.
I can't be going down the street with, forget the whole situation of trying to impress girls in a car.
Mhm.
Like, if these brakes mess up, like I'm crashing this vehicle and I'm in a situation that I don't want to be in.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was like that financial situation, being in that situation was a huge motivator for me, where I was like, I don't want to go back there. Like, I don't want to be back there. And I always had some sort of mindset for business where I'm like, how can I make money out of this? How can this has to be lucrative? How can I monetize what I'm doing? Especially because I love doing it. How can I monetize it? And going back to the whole Clinton Anderson thing, where I was watching his videos and I'm like, this guy's making money selling tack with his name on it. This guy's making videos with
Mhm.
his name on it, and he's making money, and he's touring, doing clinics.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, there's money in it. Like, there has to be money in it. And so then I remember saying, I'm going to start doing clinics. And so it must have been 2015, 16, probably,
Mhm.
um, maybe 14, 15. I said, I'm going to do a clinic.
Can
And I
you talk
advertised.
about, like, during this time, so I know you said you're picking up cheap horses and then putting time into them and selling them, and then you're training horses for other people. Like, are these just kinda like, are you kinda just in the horsemanship world, like, making good solid backyard horses for people? Are you, showing, like, is there a breed or discipline you're in? Like, has any of that taken shape, or are you just like, "Send me whatever because I need to eat"?
It was send me whatever because I have to eat.
Yeah.
And so I I knew that when I got a horse that was free or cheap, I was looking for something that was at least pretty, that I knew that
Mhm.
would catch people's attention. I knew that much, that
Yep.
if the horse was pretty enough and I could kind of get it kind of broke, that people would want to buy it. And so, but when I was getting horses in from the public, it was honestly like, send me whatever you have. And I remember, getting a draft horse that was like, had to have been like 18.2, 18.3. It was massive.
Yeah.
And that sucker was just dragging me everywhere and trying to throw me off. And I remember thinking like, this is crazy that I'm actually doing this. And I remember cousins and my brother being around me, being like, "You're crazy crawling on this big old elephant of a horse to try to get it broke." And so, yeah, I was taking in anything and everything in order to make ends meet. And the way I was going about it was, again, the Clinton Anderson method of
Hmm.
making things black and white, and making sure horses can go over tarps and go over poles, and do things that I knew people would want their horses to do.
Hmm.
And I couldn't get a horse to spin. I couldn't get a horse to stop big. I couldn't do all those things. So for me, it was like, let me get a horse to be to the point where it's safe enough where
Hmm.
a family can buy this horse
Yeah.
and want to take it home.
Which, to
And
be
so,
fair, in the beginning, that when you don't have a name out there, that opens you up to a lot more clientele than
yeah, that's,
a specialized deal like being a reining horse trainer. Now,
yeah,
maybe there's more upside to specializing. I think that's the case,
yeah,
and from a business perspective. But when
yes,
you're trying to get going, like making gentle horses, you're probably not going to run out of demand.
no. And that's what I saw, that there was a demand for that. And I was like, okay, let's keep going down this path. And again, I was savvy enough on the business side of it that I knew that this was a
Hmm.
good idea.
Yeah.
And
And
so,
one other thing I want to
yeah,
just comment, I'm I'm sure you've got we can talk more about like who you've learned from and like all the information
yeah,
you've taken in and what has influenced what makes your program what it is today.
yeah,
Um, but in terms of like having someone to look to okay, how do I make this a business? I would argue probably no one's done it better than Clinton Anderson. Like that was a really
absolutely.
good first person to have, right? And I know he can
Mhm.
be controversial and people don't like him. But I will say this to anyone who's an aspiring horse trainer, because like there's people that like him, people who are indifferent, and then people that don't
Yeah,
like him. But like
yeah,
if you're an aspiring horse trainer and you're like, I don't like Clinton Anderson, that'd be like, okay, JR comes to me and JR has always wanted to be a plumber. And there's this one guy out there who has all this content about being a plumber, and he's literally made more money at being a plumber than anyone else. But maybe you don't like the guy because because of his language or whatever. It would be really dumb to be like, well, I'll never like listen to what he has to say if like
mm,
you're in a certain field and someone's made more money than anyone else in that field and then
yep,
broadcasts information as much as that guy does.
yep. That's exactly where my mindset was, where I initially, because I didn't know anything,
Hmm.
I was attracted to the horsemanship side of it, because I was like, I didn't know anything.
Yep.
So I was like, oh, this guy's cool because he's making content and people are buying it, obviously.
Hmm.
But then I was like, he's made a business out of it. So that's where I got hooked. I was like, there's a way to make money off of this. And so that's where I was like, let's make a let's promote myself as a clinician. Let's do a clinic. And so that's why I actually got into, initially, was the clinic side of it, was because I knew he was doing clinics. And so then I remember promoting my first clinic, and I one horse was already in training, and the other horse was the horse that just randomly messaged me saying that they wanted to be in the clinic. So I had two horses my first clinic, and one of them was a horse that was already in training.
Heck yeah.
And so I remember, we were in the round pen and we were working through the clinic, and it was, to me though, it was like such an exciting moment, because I'm like, this is my first clinic, and I'll never forget that clinic. And
Hmm.
I had a few people that had kind of followed me on social media at the time that knew that I was doing a clinic, and there was two people there and the round pen. And I think the owner of the horse that was in training wasn't even there. So it was like three people that were there in this first clinic that I did. And um but for me it was like, man, this is cool. And I was like, okay, let's kind of go down this path. And so um I remember um and I honestly, I can't even, I always want to give credit where credit is due as far as who helped me along the way. But I don't remember who told me, if you want to make it in the horse world and you want to be like a legit horseman, a legit clinician, um, you have to start competing in something. You
Mhm.
can't just like keep taking horses in. Like you got to do something. And so I remember being like, well, I can't do the reining because I didn't know anything about the reining horses or the cow horses. I'm like, well, what can I do? And I was like, well, colt starting. Like I can start a colt.
Yeah.
And so I remember there were local colt starting competitions,
Mhm.
that I was like, okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's start.
Let
And
I wanna get your opinion on that, though.
yeah,
To make it big in this deal, you've gotta compete. 'Cause I or to have some legitimacy is probably more how you phrased it, correct?
correct. Yeah,
And I don't necessarily disagree with that statement, but I do feel like if you and maybe it's changed, right? Maybe that's true now versus back in the day. And
yeah.
maybe back in the day there was more than one way to skin a cat. Cause like, okay, here's an example. We've already talked about Clinton Anderson. He
Hmm.
has shown, but to me, I'm like Clinton Anderson's show record is not like why people went for like to get him involved. And then you have like all these like there's all these road to the horse guys. You got like to my knowledge, Pirelli's never shown. Buster McCleary's never shown. Buck Brannaman's never shown. Like there's a lot of these guys that were just kind of like cowboys that rode out of the hills, and I'll help you with your colt, little lady, and they did
Yep.
that whole deal, and maybe they had like some legitimate not showing, but like they cowboyed for a living or whatever, and so drew on that experience. But so there are people who haven't necessarily gone to the show pen and then made a big impact in the horse world.
Correct.
But if someone was asking me, and I'm not near as far along as you, I'm like, how old are you?
Oh man.
You
39.
39. Okay, so I
39.
I I turned 30 this year. So like
Okay.
to me, like your career, you've progressed a lot more than me, and like I just started showing this year. Um, in I showed growing up. I did 3 day eventing and stuff, and now I am in the ranch horse stuff, and so I started showing this year. And I've got aspirations to like keep growing and showing and stuff. So I would tell anyone that like for me personally, showing has been great and it's been awesome, and I do think it's helped. One, maybe it's helped people look at me a little more legitimately, just a little bit I've
Hmm.
done.
Yep.
But two, it's super, super helped my horsemanship.
Yep.
Yeah. But obviously you bought into that line of thinking because you're like, okay, I've got to go compete. And this is
Yeah.
also like, they're still big now, but to me, that time period you're talking about, like the late 20 teens, like,
Hmm.
dude, there was a colt starting competition like every county, at least here on
Yeah.
the East Coast, because that
Yeah.
was all the rage.
Yeah. It was a big thing. And that's where I was like, again, I just feel like a lot of these pieces lined up perfectly with where I was at, where in my life, in my career, and at that point in my career, where I was like, this just makes sense to go down this path.
Mm-hmm.
And so to answer your question though, I think even like you talk about Road to the Horse, you have um, Pat Pirelli, who also monetized his business in selling tack and videos, and then you have the other side of the coin where you have a Nick Dowers who cowboyed for a living, but also shows for a living,
Mm-hmm.
and does clinics at his facility and the colt starting stuff, and so he's monetized it that way. And I think there's you either compete at a high level competing and make money that way, where you can draw a crowd that way, or you have to be heavily involved in social media. No matter how you slice it, you have to be promoting yourself in
Mm-hmm.
order to stay relevant, in order to be able to draw crowds that way. So even if you're not showing competitively, I think if you're still active on social media, active in promoting yourself, marketing yourself one
Yeah.
way or another, I think those are the two paths that I would say create um, a career, create a future for you in the horse world. And for me, I'm
That's great advice. That's great
yeah,
advice.
absolutely. And so I'm not saying where at that point in my life I was thinking, because of the advice that I had received, I didn't know any better, and I was like a sponge. So when they said you have to compete,
Mhm.
I was like, okay, I have to compete. And so that was the reason why I actually got into competing, was because they said in order to make it, especially because I didn't have a family name that was passed down, a family business that was passed down to me to
Mhm.
say, now carry this on. That's been a successful business. Now carry it on. I was building something from nothing. And so for me, it was like, I gotta build that. And so I remember there was a point in time where someone was saying, you have to do social media. And I was so against social media to market myself, because I was like, no, because I feel like you're showing off, or
Mhm.
you're putting pictures and people, and so I was very much against it. But there was a gal that was, at the time, I had traded um, boarding for her being like the barn manager. And
Okay.
so she's
Yep.
like, let me do your social media and I'll run it for you. And you don't have to worry about it. And so this is where the name JR started.
Okay.
So so my full name is Jonath, Jonath, last name Robles. So Jonath Robles. But the name of the company is JR Horse Training.
Okay.
So the J and the R stand for Jonath and Robles.
Okay.
And so when she made my Facebook account, she took the JR from JR Horse Training and then just put my last name to it. And so JR was JR Robles, and that's what it was on Facebook. And I told her, I said, you run it. I want nothing to do with it. You
Yeah.
do whatever you want with it. And so the name JR stuck. And it was like, okay, that was simple. That was just, it was clean, it was short, it was sweet to the point, and it
People
was simple.
remember it. People
People
remember
remember it.
JR. Absolutely.
People remember it. And so for me, I was like, cool. It was kind of a happy accident that it wasn't meant to happen, but it just happened that way.
Yeah.
And so that name stuck from then on out. And so again, I was very much against the social media part of it, but she was like, trust me, like this is going to help. Like I know that every business, and at that point, again, like you're saying, 2016 is really where that marketing and Facebook started. And so we're talking
Mhm.
about 2014 maybe, where she's like, you have to do it, it's going to help you, I
Wow.
promise you.
Good for her,
And so,
because that's super progressive for the time
correct,
then.
correct, because she was trying to run it as a just as a business in general, not even a horse business, just as a business.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, like cool, let's go down this path. And so it took me 2 years to buy into the Instagram, uh, that whole trend. And so I think it was 2016, 17 where I bought into Instagram. And so now I had Facebook and Instagram, where I was like, man, this is kind of cool to promote myself. But this is where I think a lot of people get um, deterred from doing it. Is I would post stuff, and again, where I talked about my life, where I had been, where stuff was, I was frustrated and angry and always upset about stuff, and then got into horses, and my life took a different turn where I was trying to spread positivity, where I was like, hey man, like you got to do better for yourself, and I'm doing it, so let me try to spread that message. And so I would post stuff online, like just a positive note of the day, like, keep at it or whatever it was. And I remember just through the grapevine, through people, everybody was like, oh, this is stupid. Oh, that's
Yeah.
dumb. And, you look like an idiot because what are you trying to do? And so I remember there was moments where I was like, man, maybe I should stop posting. Maybe I should stop
Mm.
marketing myself. But for some reason, there was just a voice in the back of my head. Cause at that point, that lady that had started my page, she handed everything over to me. So I was running everything. So I've been running both of my social media pages since 2016. So
Wow.
everything since then has been me. And so I remember there was a point in time where people made fun of me, putting hashtags at the end of my post, the way I worded things, the way I was tagging things. And I remember people and this will come full circle when we talk about a little bit more about this, where people were like, that's dumb, whatever. So anyway, I kept with it. And then clients at the time would be like, hey, I saw your post and it was really cool. And hey, can I send my horse to you? And I like, what your message is. Can we send horses to you? And I was like, man, this is like,
Yeah.
it's getting business. And so I kept thinking the people that are making fun of me aren't sending me horses. Who cares what they're saying? The
Yeah.
people that are reading my messages and liking what I'm saying, they're sending me horses. So my messages aren't going to be for these people that are
Yeah.
making fun of me. It's into me for the people that are wanting to better themselves, not just in the horses, but as just human beings. And so that's where my message was always coming
Yeah. Well,
from and towards.
you were probably just listening to a vocal minority, right? Like there's a
Yes.
lot of people that, and I do it too. I try to get better at it because now I run a business and like we have a social media. There's a lot of people that like look at something on social media and like, wow, that's great. Glad that guy's doing that. And then they just keep like, they don't
Yep.
interact with it. There's no comment,
No.
anything, but they like approve. And very rarely you really got to win someone over to like get a like or do whatever.
Yeah.
And then, but if someone dislikes something, that
Oh
let me
man.
get on this
Oh
keyboard
man.
and I'm going to give JR a piece of my mind. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's
that,
it's 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 brutal, man. Some
yeah,
of the stuff that I've comments that I've gotten that sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm gonna reply, and I'm like, I'd rather not. Like,
yeah,
why engage? Like that's what they're looking for, and so I know I
absolutely.
won't engage.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten people message me privately, and they're like, how do you not reply? Why do you not get pissed off? How do you not get like reply something? And I'm like, they're looking for something to engage into, to
Yeah.
fight, to get attention. And so I'm like, if I don't feed into it, then it just dies there. It just stays there.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of it's been a thing where for me it was like, I'm going to do it no matter what.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't helping the business, I would have said, man, these people they're making a point, or they have a point, because it's dumb,
Hmm.
and I'm not getting business because of it. So, but I'm like, no, you're saying it's dumb, but I'm making money off of it. So I'm going to keep going down this path.
Yeah.
And so,
That's
that
great.
was a huge moment for me in the business side of it, where I was like, no, this is actually kind of cool. And, I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit, where 4 years after, like 3 years after that, so I'd say probably around 2018, 2019, I remember people being like, where did this guy come from? All this marketing, and how did he get all this marketing, and why is he, and man, this guy came out of nowhere. And in my head, because I would hear these comments and I'd be like, no, I've been grinding. I've been
Yeah.
posting these comments that people were making fun of. And now society, or mainstream society, mainstream media, is buying into this whole cowboy Western thing, or even just the equestrian thing. And now they're making a business out of it, and monetizing it with ads and commercials. And to be honest, I think people think about, and this is something, I love this topic, so I get really excited to talk about this. Um, I think the more recent thing that people remember about there being a big explosion with, in the horse industry, was, um, Yellowstone,
Hmm.
and during COVID, and the Run for a Million, and the Last Cowboy. Like that was the more modern, recent
Hmm.
explosion. But I
Yes.
don't think people give enough credit to what happened about 2015, 2016. And I think what I give credit to, where all this actually started, is the documentary for Buck Brenneman.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And wasn't that, I mean, it got popular later, but that was like, that came out in like 2012, 13, something like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that movie didn't get big till that big surge in social media, which was the 2015,
Yeah. Yeah. And
2016.
then it was like
Because
on Netflix and super
correct.
accessible to people. Yeah.
Correct. And that goes back to the question about showing and who was showing, or do you have to show in order to make it big?
Hmm.
Buck Brenneman was doing local clinics and traveling around the country doing clinics and horsemanship. And he obviously he did the competitions with roping competitions, and
Hmm.
the buckaroo style competitions, but he wasn't mainstream. He was doing this because he loved the horses, and but
Yeah.
then that took it to a whole different level financially,
Mhm.
where then there were books, and then there were things that again he could monetize because of it.
Yeah.
And so I think the Clint Anderson movement and the Buck Brenneman thing are the two things that between 2010 2015
Mhm.
that really took horsemanship to a whole different level, that it wasn't just something that was a 4-H thing. It wasn't just a something for the rich elite people doing jumping horses. It was something that targeted the middle class, that was
Yeah.
accessible, like you said, through social media, and you can buy these DVDs and learn. And so I think those to me are the founders of what actually started this whole movement into that. And so I was smart enough with what was happening to jump on that, even though I was getting criticized and made fun of, to jump on that train to make it something that was for me making me money.
Yeah.
And so, this brings up another interesting topic where you talk about Clinton Anderson, where a lot of people think that he's very controversial because of the things that he says, the things that he does, or whatever. But there are people that like him, other people that do follow what he says. And so, when I saw the Clinton Anderson documentary, the way that he talked to people, the way that he interacted with horses, I was like, that's what I want. I want that partnership. I want that type of horsemanship, not the rigid, the type of training that it's just black and
Yeah.
white.
You mean the Buck documentary, not the Clinton
The Buck
Anderson? Yeah.
documentary.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So, but when I saw,
absolutely.
but I was comparing
Mhm.
Clinton Anderson videos versus the Buck Brenneman documentary,
Yes, sir.
where with Clinton Anderson everything was like it has to be this way or no way. It's
Mhm.
just black and white. But then listening to Buck, it was like, oh, it's very fluid. Just go off of feel, go
Mhm.
off of timing, and whatever the energy is with the horse. And so I was like, man, I can relate to that more because of my background in schooling.
Yeah. That's
And
awesome.
so then I had the opportunity to go see Buck Brenneman in person in the state of Washington. He was giving a clinic, and I was like, man, I got to go see this guy and see if he is everything he says he is on this documentary. And I remember meeting him at a lunch break during his clinic, and he was like, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to talk to you guys during lunch. And so this is around 2016, 2017. And so I was like a fangirl, like a kid, like a just stalking a celebrity. Like he went down the stairs and kind of out towards the back of the facility. And I remember following him and my brother and I followed him. And I ran into him, and there was probably 7 or 8 people that were with me, just random people. And we went over, and I went up to him and I was like, hey, thank you very much for doing what you're doing in the horse world. I think it's awesome that you're promoting horsemanship in its truest form and not just as a gimmick. And,
Mhm.
and I told him, I said, one day I'm going to travel the country giving clinics and doing exactly what you're doing. And I remember him looking at me, and he had no idea who I was. And he goes, I believe you. I believe that you're going to do that.
Yeah.
And so I shook his hand, gave him a hug. I took a picture. I still have the picture that we took. And I remember this, and this will always stick with me. I remember walking away from that interaction, and there was the 7, 8 people plus my brother and I were walking away from Buck. And I remember the first thing that people said about him was, gosh dang, he's an awesome guy. Like, he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
Oh, he's a fantastic human being. And then they talked about his horsemanship. So then I was like, man, that's and to me, his horsemanship was up here. So the
Mhm.
fact that people put his human side, his humanship above the horsemanship,
Yeah.
to me, I was like, man, that says something. And so for me, as 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 a person that had gone through my struggles in life, I was like, man, that's what I want. I want people to talk about me as a human being first, and then talk about my horsemanship. And
Mhm.
so that's been a driving force for me, is that side of the that side of the coin, where the business side of it is a certain way, but I'm also conducting myself a certain way with people at the same time. And some people, you know, I had an assistant I have different assistants or different working students that come from different universities throughout the year now.
Hmm.
And I remember one gal that came from one of the universities and came and was with me for 2 months one summer. And she went to a town 2 or 3 hours away on the coast, and she was wearing a vest that said JR Horse Training. And there was a lady at the store, and she goes, "Oh, like JR Horse Training?" And she was like, "Yeah, I'm a working student from this university, and I'm there for a few months." And the lady goes, "Okay," like, and she kind of pulls her aside, and she's like, "I gotta ask, like, is he really like that all the time, like how he is on social media, or is it fake?" And she's like, "You can tell me. Like, I'm not going to tell anybody."
Yeah.
And the girl's like, "No, like that's how he is. That's who he is as a person."
Yeah.
And so she was like, "Okay, I just wanted to make sure that he was really that, like that's how he was." And I'm far from perfect, but as far as like how I am, as far as like genuinely try to be a good person, and I make my mistakes, but I am a man of faith. I am a man of God, and so when I conduct myself, I'm like, I really do want to do the right thing. I do want to make sure that people are okay. I do want to make sure that people are happy, and I think that's probably where a lot of my stress comes from
Hmm.
nowadays. Is where I want to make sure that people around me are happy. People around me are doing good,
That
and so yeah,
that I was just
so
gonna
that
say that's great, man. I think that's a really healthy perspective to have and can definitely get lost on some people. I think it's really cool that you were able to go into a situation and like see a guy like Buck who in a lot of ways like I totally get what you're saying, especially for young men. He like really represents an ideal, and in not a bad way. Part of what I feel like Buck he sells to people is like he's kind of this Marlboro man cowboy, like this is how I'm going to interact with the horse, this is how I'm going
yeah,
to interact with people, like I'm going to do things the right way, right? um
hmm
and I think it's really cool for you too, like getting into this. And it's probably I think it probably has a lot to do with you sounded like you were pretty strong in your faith
hmm
going into all that. Because what I've seen, and we've talked about it on the podcast, sometimes people can get into this and they let horses and horsemanship become their god, right? If they don't
yeah,
already have that in
yep,
place.
hmm
And when you do that, then it becomes a lot easier to make that jump of not even make the jump, but not prioritize what you just said, where I'm going to prioritize being a good person, interacting with people. Uh, a good expression I like is going and filling other people's cups, right? When I go out into the world and do this passion that God gave me, I'm going to
hmm
use it to fill other people's cups.
yep,
Because they can get so focused, especially young men, super driven. I mean, you're out there trying to make a name for yourself, doing all the
hmm
stuff. You can be like, oh, well, there's a badass guy like Buck Brannaman. Like, now I'm going to go be a badass guy and I'm going to do
yeah,
all this stuff. And like, people are going to like pack arenas to watch me ride around and things like that. Um, and so I think it's really cool that you could go and see all that, and like that was your big takeaway.
yeah,
But
yeah,
I would imagine your faith is what allowed you to keep that healthy perspective on all that.
yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's attributed to my mom and just the way that I was raised
Heck yeah.
was that's never, I don't feel like that's ever going to go away from me. It just, as much as I love what I do, there's something that's above that this whole thing is for me is only able to happen because of one person, one thought, one belief, and that's because of God. Like
Yeah.
for me, this is such a blessing that I get to do this for a living, because I could have taken a completely different path, and now I get to travel around the country doing what I love and also get to help people. Like that was the whole purpose of me going into the field that I got into, was I want to be able to help people. So the fact that I still get to do both,
Hmm.
and people always joke like, "Oh, here, today's not just a lesson. Like I need a therapy session today. And so people joke that when they're with me, like, oh, and so it's just kind of funny. So now instead of working with people, sitting on a couch and me with the pen and paper, now people are on a horse and I'm
Yeah.
doing the same thing and helping people out. And so it's interesting, but it's also something that um, I want to make sure that it's something that I never lose, because I feel like it would be disrespectful to my mom and everything that she
Mm.
worked for, and to try to make sure that I was, or that I am. And so if I do something, if I make a mistake, if I do something, it's always like, man, like I let my mom down, or man, like it wasn't, that wasn't the right thing to do. And so, um, for me, that's a big driving force in being a good human being, because I want my mom to be able to walk around somewhere at a show, and she's had moments like that where they're like, that's your son, like, oh man, you've done such a great job. And I know that fills my mom with
Mhm.
joy, hearing those type of things. And so for me, that's kind of cool that, and now, you asked me the question about what my mom thought about when I switched over to the horses. um Now and it's funny because my mom's still the same person. She knows that I've had some success now in the horse world, but her questions are always still the same. Did you eat? Did you get enough sleep? How are you feeling? And it's never like, how did you do? How, did you get first place? Did you win money? It's always just, how are you feeling? How are you doing?
Yeah.
And so I
Mom
love that
stuff.
that's that. Yep, mom stuff. And so yeah, so I got to that point where I was doing the colt starting competitions, kind of back to that moment.
Mhm.
And I was actually doing okay for not having a resume. My resume was trial and error at home with some of these rank horses, and so I was like, okay, let's give it a go. And
Yeah.
so slowly but surely, I ended up. I think I was uh, top 5 in the nation for this specific competition that was being hosted at the NFR, and that was in
Oh, no kidding.
2019.
Hmm.
And so I got to be on a stage at the NFR competing, where I was, I think, ranked number 5 in the country, 4 or 5 in the country in that competition,
Hmm.
starting colts. And I remember at that point, 2019, I didn't have a sponsor, any sponsor. It was just me doing things and promoting myself. And I remember a friend of mine at the time was like, you need to get some sponsors. Like, I think that would also uh like legitimize who you are. Like, you need to get some sponsors. And I was like, but nobody's gonna sponsor me. Like,
Yeah.
I'm I'm a nobody. Like,
Yeah.
I'm out here doing what I love, but I
So
haven't
what's
done
your
anything.
opinion on that? Because I feel like the sponsor legitimacy thing is a very chicken or egg type deal, right?
Yeah.
It's like, look at that guy, he's sponsored, he must have something to say.
Yeah.
But also it's like, why would anyone give you money to like promote them when you're not legitimate in the first place? So
Correct. And
how do you
and,
tote
and so
that line?
so for me, it was, again, because I hadn't had anybody approach me, anybody send me an email. So I was like, well, I'm gonna give it a go. But I gave it a go because I made the finals to go to the NFR. So that was like my carrot that I could dangle, of being like,
Mm,
hey, like, you can sponsor me because now I'm going to be on this stage and I can promote your brand on this stage. And I reached out to a saddle pad company that, shout out to Team Equine. They're, till this day, they've been my OG sponsor. They've been with me since 2019, and they've taken care of me so well. They're amazing people, and they're here locally. And so I remember they sent me a patch that said Team Equine, and I put it on my shirt. So when I went to NFR, I had my one sponsor, and I was so proud of that sponsor. And they had given me a saddle pad that I could use during the competition. So I thought I was, oh man, I was so just
yeah.
the bee's knees, because I had a sponsor and it was cool. And
That's awesome,
um,
man.
so I think that there's this sense of like, it goes back to the degree thing. Like, let's just say that you are applying for a job somewhere, even if you're not going to use whatever job you're applying for. Let's just say you have a degree in psychology and you're going to go be a plumber, like you were talking about. I'll use those two comparisons.
Mhm.
And someone's like, well, I don't know if I'm going to hire you, but they're like, oh, but you have a degree, you have, you went to college, so you have to have some sort of legitimacy as a person, as a good student, as someone that's
Mhm.
very coachable. So
Yeah.
let me take you on and mold you into something that could be a really good plumber. And so I feel like that goes back to your question about the sponsors. I feel like even if you don't have sponsors, I think people kind of have the sense of like, well, he's not doing anything. That doesn't mean that that's the truth, but I think when people see that you have sponsors, especially big name sponsors that are willing to back you, you know these big companies aren't willing to put their name on somebody that isn't going to represent their company well. So I
Mhm.
think that also kind of sends that message to people like, oh shoot, that company's willing to back them up. So that means that they're doing something right. So then that is the initial draw for a lot of people where people like the pretty thing. People like the bright, shiny thing. And, you know, you can be the bright, shiny thing and draw people a certain way, but then you have to have some sort of depth. You have to have some sort of substance to actually keep people around.
Yeah.
And so for me, you can have the logos, you can have all the stuff, but can you back it up with your horsemanship? Can you back it up with your business skills? Can you back it up with what I would consider like the X factor? Can you do extra things that people are drawn to? Because you can, again, you can be the person that people are like, oh man, that guy's awesome, but then you go into the program or you send a horse to their program and then it's like, oh man, that wasn't anything at all what was advertised. And then soon enough you're going to start getting horses pulled from your program, and we all know that the horse world is very, very small, so those type of things travel around pretty quickly. And so I think for me, I think yes, especially someone that is starting out in the horse business, is that important, the sponsors and stuff. I think it's a part of it. I don't think it's a mandatory thing, but I think it does give you some sort of legitimacy that you are doing something enough for a company to want to back you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that totally makes sense because I mean, it's just like the law of attraction if you're trying to get leads or whatever. It's like I'm sure one sponsor breeds another, breeds another.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. But, you're talking about you felt like this path was in front of you. If you hadn't listened to the advice of you need to go compete at something, you never would have had the carrot to dangle and a reason for anyone to sponsor you.
Correct. And
Yeah.
and so that's where I feel like, um, when you asked earlier about do you do you need to go compete, or can you do it a different way? I feel like that was a part of the path for me to prove myself, because there's a difference between, I guess this is kind of where I come from, because you can go online and say that you are this and that all day long till you're blue in the face. You can do that. But when you go into the show ring, now it's no longer you saying it. It's a group of judges, a group of other showmen that are like, okay, he is that, or he is
Mhm.
able to do that. And so I feel like that does create a sense of legitimacy in people's eyes that, oh shoot, he can do those things. It's not just him promoting himself or her promoting himself online saying, yeah, I can get a horse to spin or I can get a horse to stop. And okay, well, let's apply it somewhere and let's see if you can actually put it to use in a show setting, even if it's not real world work on a ranch somewhere, but can
Yeah.
you put it to work? Can you put it to work where someone else says, yes, that is good stuff? And so I feel like that's where the showing does play a factor in being a way to legitimize yourself as a horseman or as a trainer. I think that is an important part of it. I don't think it's a necessity. I don't think it's a specific requirement, but I
Right.
think it does help.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, to me, I think just going into showing, and you could do the same thing if you've got like a ranch to go day work on. I think anyone's
Mhm.
horsemanship will really improve if they just have real world parameters they are forced to operate within, not
Yeah.
just we got all day to get old Fluffy here to like face me up in the round pen,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, but I think what you're saying is for the actual like developing the skill set and the horse training of it all, you don't necessarily need to do that. But on the business side, be a it will be a testament to what you are capable of because you are literally being compared to your peers. And it is a way for
Yes.
the public to understand, at least on that day, on those horses, where you sit compared to your peers.
Correct.
Mhm.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
I know the horsemanship world can, I think that's a lot of it's gone away, but kind of in that big renaissance you were talking about with like the Brannaman documentary and all the social media and stuff, the horsemanship world could throw a lot of rocks at the show world
Yeah.
for stuff like that. But I do think, that is where the show pen has a lot of value, is the objectivity
Hmm.
of it
Hmm.
for the most part. And
Hmm.
yeah, to me, it, like, faith or business or whatever, people are always going to be attracted to truth. And I know
Hmm.
it's not always 100% true what happens in the show pen, but
Yeah.
it's probably the closest thing the horse industry gets to right now. And I
Yep.
think it's a
Yep.
darn good thing it's there, because it's like, 150 years ago, we didn't need horse shows because everybody had
No.
horses in their backyard, and the proof was
Mhm.
in the pudding, like where you bought your horses from. Like, oh, he's a
Yeah.
good guy to buy horses from. He's not.
Yeah.
Like, but
Yeah.
it was more like that. I like a Dodge, Chevy, or Ford. Nowadays,
Yeah.
if we didn't have horse shows, like, why are people going to ride horses for the most part?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah. It's turned into something completely different. It's turned into its own thing. Like I said, especially lately with all the documentary shows and the reality shows and just even the competitions that they have nowadays with the amount of money in them. I think it's
Hmm.
just so attractive to to do it because of that.
Yeah. 100%. And to me, the relation to showing now, we can talk about this more as we progress in your story, but
Yeah.
the relation to showing now is it's kind of like a NASCAR team or a Formula One team. But, people, and my understanding is auto racing is kind of the same way. Like, you can play
Yeah.
at whatever level you want to, and you
Yeah.
can be the guy who's got like the 8 bay garage in town and play on
Yeah.
your little auto racing circuit and like have a driver and do all that stuff. Like, you can be the lawyer from Ohio and have buy the 2-year-old, have a guy show it for you in the futurity or
Yeah.
whatever, and then you show it as a non-pro or do whatever you want to do. And like, you can play in the game as much or as little as you want to play in the
Yeah.
game. But on
Yeah.
the top, you've got all these personalities, the horse trainers or the
Yeah.
drivers, like, helping people play the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's, I think you are exactly right where it is a team because, for me, I'm the face of the business, good or bad. I've always said this, when it's good, it's always a team game. When it's bad, it's just the face of the team that gets it. And
Hmm.
that's just how it is. And sometimes that's a tough one to take on the chin, but it's regardless, it is a team thing because where I'm at now, I would not be able to do it if I didn't have the team that I have with me. And I say that wholeheartedly, 100% genuine about that because there's so many moving pieces that there is no way there's enough time in the day for me to do what I'm doing now if it was just a one man team. And so for me, it is
Absolutely.
it's definitely, as much as I'm the face of the team, of the program, of the ranch. It's definitely it runs because of the pit crew. It runs because of the
Yes.
sponsors. It runs because of everybody that's involved in it for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're, I I assume, not running at the same level you are, but I'm in the same boat, man. Like, without help, I could not do it all.
Hmm.
And I'm just lucky to have competent people around me that are such great help. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
100% a team deal when you get into the
Yeah.
show. And
Yeah.
yeah.
It takes a lot, and so for me, I'm blessed right now that I have some incredible clients that are investing a lot of time and money into our program and putting some horses that I in my wildest dreams did I ever think I was going to throw a leg over some of the horses that I got in my program right now. And that to me is, and I'm like, man, it was so long ago, blah blah blah. But then I think about it, I'm like, it was only 2017, 2018 when I was still riding some rank horses. And, fast forward to 2025, and now I'm on horses at 500,000, $1 million horses, like,
Yeah.
and 300,000. And I'm like, there are these numbers that in my head are still so hard for me to wrap my head around, but I still have to ride and train these horses regardless of the price tag. I got to ride this
Mhm.
horse as an individual and still be able to show these horses and not be, and I'll be honest, at some of these horses I'm initially, and even now I guess I'm still, actually yes, I'm still intimidated because it some of these horses are coming from the top program in the country with a $9 million rider that rode this horse for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And now it's like, okay, what am I supposed to do with this horse after it's been with this guy
Let
for
me add
this
my
long?
touch to the equation.
Yeah, it's like what I can't reinvent the wheel. I'm not going to. I'm not going to try. But how can I ride this horse to try to make it fit me? And I guess that's where now I'm not risking my life in riding a horse that's going to split in two. But now it's like, how can I do justice
Mhm.
and promote this horse in the right way for my clients and for myself and even for himself as a potential stud for the public. Like there's so many other aspects now that it's not so much a physical thing, but it's very much a mental thing, but it's also a financial thing where now we're talking different numbers in order to keep things a certain way. And so
Sure.
that's been a huge
Yeah.
transition. Obviously, I know I just skipped ahead
Yeah,
8 years.
so
There's
I
yeah.
wanna hear about how we get there. So
Yeah.
we're and that's super cool. I never heard about the national cult starting deal with, like, an NFR finals, but I was still at that time, at least, I was still very new in just, like, the Western horse world in
Yeah.
general,
Yeah.
'cause all my
Yeah.
background was in the English world. But you're there, you got the sponsor, you got the patch, you're prouder than punch about just like, "Heck yeah, look at me."
Yeah.
Um, so where how do we go from there? Because clearly you got into the reining, right?
Yep.
So how do we go from the colt starting guy who's got his first sponsor? Where are we moving next? You still working out of the same barn? You still
So
starting colts? What are we doing?
so this part of the book in my life from 2019 to now feels like it's only been a year and a half, 2 years max, because so much has happened and so much has changed in a good way, but also in a bad way that I don't really consider a bad thing. I just consider they were lessons along the way. And
Mhm.
so for me, it was 2019 to 2000 to present, I think had the most climb at the most rapid pace, because I feel like
Right.
from 2010 to 2019, I feel like there was a subtle increase
Yeah.
kind of happening. And then 2019 happened with the sponsorship, with the legitimacy of being at a national competition at the NFR, where people up to that point were like, oh, he's doing something. Oh, he's
Yeah. Yeah.
promoting himself.
But you're the
But it
guy,
wasn't
like, people in your corner of Oregon, people know who you are. And
correct.
you've built the social media deal, so I'm sure
Mhm.
that's really, really helped because you were way ahead of, like, several years ahead of the game in the
Yep.
Western industry for sure.
Correct.
So you've built that up, but, you know,
So
people
yeah,
people probably haven't heard of you outside of your, like, corner of the horse world.
no. And
Yeah.
and even outside of the just the Western world, because I hadn't gotten into anything else besides the colt starting and the problem horses.
Mhm.
So I get to the competition, come back from the competition, and I'm still at a facility that I'm leasing. That the facility, the guy was really nice enough to let me lease it, and it was kind of run down, and it was just, it was getting the job done. And I was kind of sort of making a decent, comfortable living at that time.
Mhm.
And then I had a lady from the state of Washington call me after this competition, after the colt riding competition in the finals. And she said, "Hey, I saw what you did at this competition. I run a dressage barn. Would you want to come run your business out of my facility and help me start my dressage horses?"
Okay.
And I was like, I don't know. Like, I have my own thing going, so I probably would have to say no. I'm sorry. And she said, "I'll pay you this much a month." And I was like, "Let me put my 30-day notice in. Let me let me get out of here." And
Yeah.
so
I'm
I
sensing a
put
pat.
my
That's the same as like, I'll give you 6 grand for that horse right now.
correct, correct. And I've always been, again, when opportunities like that come my way, there's a reason why they're coming my way, and not don't turn them down.
You bet.
And so so I think the saying is, the harder you work, the luckier you get. I guess it kind of goes. And
100%.
so I'm working my butt off, and these things kind of keep, happening. And so I said yes, moved to the facility up in Washington, and now I'm driving, instead of an hour 15 where I was driving before, now I'm driving an hour and a half there and an hour and a half back.
And
But
you're
again,
probably
it was
doing like what, 12-hour days
12
running
hour
your
day. So for me, it
horse
was
business?
to me, it was the hour and a half there. I got to get ready for the 12-hour day. And then the hour and a half back home, I got to decompress from the whole day. And so I actually didn't mind the drive, because I almost spaced out the hour and a half. And by the time I got home, I'm still halfway through my day in my mind about what had happened. And so it was good for me to have that
Now,
drive where.
what's the reason? Were you just trying to stay close to family? Like, why wouldn't you move closer to where you were working?
So at the time, financially, again, I was probably 2019. So I was nine, about 9.5 years out of college at the time.
Okay.
And so after college, I had lived with some of my buddies. And so there was the group of us that I was talking about. And then one guy got married. So then he left the group. And then there was four of us.
Yeah.
And then, that guy. And so then slowly we kind of start dwindling away. But by, I think, around 2019, I think there were three of us left. And so at that point, financially, it made sense for me to still stay with my buddies, where rent was
Yeah.
super cheap because
I
there was
see.
three of us.
Yeah.
And so for
So the
me,
commute penciled out better.
correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so there was no point in me going somewhere and paying $1,600 in rent where I could pay $500 in rent, and it just wasn't a big deal.
Yeah. And
And so
and then you're with your buddies, which
I was
like
with my buddies. Yeah.
that's that's like a fun time. For
Yeah.
me, it was a very fun time. It's like we're adults, but we're just like, you come home from work and it's just guys hanging out.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that it was a great time for me, because I was still doing what I loved, and again, I got to be around my buddies, and I didn't really have to sacrifice that part of my life, my personal life, in order to still be able to do what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so
Well, I mean, besides the fact that I guess on the weekdays you were only home, like you were gone 15 hours a day.
I was, and
Yeah.
I was gone all day, and I'd come back and everybody would be asleep because they all had to work the next day too. And so,
Yeah.
it was it was what it was at the time. And, so I went there and to that dressage facility. And so that opened up my market to a whole different niche of people in the horse world, where now it
Yeah.
wasn't just the Western world, it was the English dressage world, where people started to get to know my name. And this lady, I thought I had a good work ethic until I met this lady. And I think at the time I was probably running 12, maybe 13 horses in full-time training when I was leasing the facility before going to her. And when I got to her, she had 37, 38 horses in full-time training. So I was like, man, this is 3 times the amount of horses that I'm working. And so I saw that her work ethic was something else. I mean, she was a hard worker. And so I think for me being around certain people helps me, where I'm trying to better myself and be competitive and
Mhm.
get better and get ahead in life, that when I see somebody like that, it just drives me to do the same thing and to work harder.
Yeah.
And
And I
so,
think most people are like that, right? Like you're even if you have a strong sense of self, like your habits and your drive are a lot of osmosis from the people
yeah.
around you.
Oh yeah. And so for me, that I think that opened up my eyes to a whole different world of horsemanship, because up to that point I had been working with um, quarter horses, gypsies, Arabs, draft horses, maybe some sort of thoroughbred. And I get to this world and I'm working 3-year olds that are 16-2,
Mhm.
16-3, 17 hands, that are bred to go, that are bred to be
Yeah.
on with the ride with contact. And so it was a whole different feel. And her her program was, I got 2 weeks to ride in my Western saddle, and then I had to ride the next 2 weeks in a dressage saddle. And so I had never ridden in a
Dang.
dressage saddle before. And so for me, it was like I had to get my work done starting a colt in 2 weeks, so that when I got in this dressage saddle, and actually the first saddle that they tried to put me in, a dressage saddle, I did not like how it felt. So they put me in a jumping saddle, an old jumping saddle that they had. And so I rode these colts in a jumping saddle because that felt, it didn't hurt. The dressage saddle that they had me in
Yeah.
just
I
wasn't comfortable.
totally get what you're saying. A
Yeah.
lot of those dressage saddles, in my opinion, kind of like they'll warp a person's hip angle so much
Yep.
that it feels a little unnatural.
Yeah, I didn't like it. So we went to the jumping saddle. So it was 30 days with these colts that, again, were bred to move. They're bred to
Mhm.
go forward.
Yeah.
And so I thought I could do the things that I had been doing up to that point. And then being there, I had to think outside the box and do things that I had never done before. And I learned a lot being there, on how to start a lot of these horses. And so there were some horses that were a little tougher than others that I had to, it took us 45, 60 days instead of 30 days, and then send them back home.
Yeah.
And so it was a machine. I mean, we had to, not the animals, but the program was a machine where it was, where it was a revolving door. We were getting horses in and out after 30 days. And I want to say probably in the matter of 10 months, we probably started 80 colts. And
Mm.
so I was like, I mean, and on top of that, I was still trying to run my own business out of that facility, training my quarter horses. And so that was definitely a time in my life where the workload and my work ethic just took a whole different leap.
Yeah.
So I think I needed that. Um, Emotionally and mentally, that was a really tough time for me, because the lady and I, we butted heads a lot towards the end about horses needing more time, and somebody else thinking that they didn't need more time, that it had to be done in a certain amount of time.
Mhm.
And so we were kind of butting heads on,
Yeah.
to
Well,
me,
because
I've always,
did some of that, I'm just making an assumption, did some of that
yeah,
come because she was client facing and you were not?
correct,
Yep.
correct. And that's where,
That's
at the
always
time,
tough.
it is tough. And at the time I was still young in the horse world, where I was almost kind of naive to what she was facing and what she was getting behind the scenes as a business owner on that big of a scale.
Mhm.
And so I was and almost oblivious to that, because I was like, why? Like, just tell the clients this, tell the clients that. And so I learned a lot in that situation, where a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that towards the end I saw that she was facing, that I was like, man, that's a lot to face, and to deal with. And um, but but for me, it was something that I needed to go through for sure. And so with being there, that opened me up to a whole different market, where I got an opportunity to move back home at a facility that was 5 minutes away from
Oh,
where I was living at the
heck yeah.
time.
Mhm.
And so that obviously, when you asked me that question, I was like, if I had the opportunity to train closer, I would have. Like I would have taken it. Where if I didn't have to move, that would have been the ideal situation. And this is kind of funny because I've never said this part, but I'm going to say it here. With this will be really funny. So, 3 years, 5 years before moving to this facility that I'm about to move to, that's 5 minutes from home, I was in that moment of taking garbage bags full of clothes to that place in Portland to get money. I'm traveling to different facilities to try to make money. And that's when I was with that girl that was like, "You're so obsessed with this and
Mhm.
you need to stop." And so that moment in time, I responded to a different Craigslist ad for somebody looking for a stall cleaner.
Mhm.
And so hey, I'd love to clean stalls for you guys. Sure, come on out. And I went out, and it was a English barn at the time, and I started cleaning stalls, and they had probably somewhere between 30, 35 horses. And I'm cleaning stalls, and I remember thinking, wow, like I'm getting a job. Like I got a job. Like this is now like, again, this is 2015, 2016. And I'm like, this could be a career as I'm cleaning stalls. And I remember calling my girlfriend at the time, and I'm like, hey, like I think this is going to be a good thing. Like I think this is going to be a good home for me where I can make something being here. And she was kind of like, okay, like whatever you say. And I remember, and it was during my lunch break. And I remember I was on the phone, and I remember the owner of the barn walked by and saw me on the phone
Mm.
and kept walking. And then I was like, I hope they don't think that I was like mid shift and I'm on the phone. And so I hung up the phone, got back to work, finished my shift, and the owner of the barn came over and was like, "Hey, we appreciate you coming out. I think we're going to go a different direction." And gave me $50 for the day for cleaning stalls all day.
Yeah.
And I remember being in that moment, being like, "This sucks," because I had just called my girlfriend and saying, I think this is going to be a good place for me to land. And the lady was like, the lady and her husband were like, "You don't know how to drive a tractor. You took a little longer on the stalls. We need someone that's just ready to clean stalls now." And so
Mhm.
I was like, man, I got fired from cleaning stalls. Like this sucks. Like this is terrible. And so I remember thinking, um, I can't wait to come back to this place in the future and be a, a more successful and come back in a different form, in a different way, and
Mhm.
be like, I told you so. That like I was good enough to clean your stalls, and now I want to be able to be good enough to come back and train your horses. That's kind of my mindset, where I was like, I was kind of stubborn, where I was like, I'm going to come back at some point and be like, see, like I was actually good enough. And so fast forward to 2000, it probably was 2020-ish,
Mhm.
when I was moving, when I got this call, "Hey, we got this facility 5 minutes out of town, blah, blah, blah. Would you want to come train out of our facility?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to come out, interview for it, blah, blah, blah." And so she sent me the address, and 4 years had passed by, 5 years had passed by since I had been fired. And so I remember driving to the barn and being like, this place looks so familiar. And then sure enough, I get to this place, and I was like, this is the place I got fired from 5 years ago,
Oh,
not being able
great.
to clean stalls for them. And this will actually be the first time I've said this out loud. And I never told them. They never knew. They still probably don't know. But so if they hear this podcast, they're going to realize that the guy that they fired in 2015, 2016 from cleaning stalls was actually the guy that they rehired to come back and train their horses. And so it's kind of funny that in that short of time, just the amount of change that happened, and the obsession apparently that it turned into, to be able to come back and train. And so, yeah, so we're at 2020 in ish, and now I'm back at this facility that's super close by, and I'm training close by. So that's where I'm up to right now in the story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. That is so full circle. That's out of a movie, basically.
And so
Yeah. And so what
So
you're training their horses, what kind of horses do they have?
So they have dressage horses,
Okay.
and I'm also able to run my business out of there.
Okay.
And the reason they knew of me, because they're dressage people, they knew that I was training horses for that lady in Washington, who was at that time a big name in the dressage world. So they, in their mind, they're thinking, well, if he's training for her, then he should be good enough to train
You got
out of
yeah,
here.
it's like the sponsor deal. It's you get
It's like the
one, you
sponsor.
attract more. It's like,
Yep.
well, so and so hired him, so
Yep.
yep. Alrighty.
And so um I'm gonna skip back 2 years because I forgot about this part because this is a very important part of my story. Um, I'm leasing that facility prior to going to the NFR for that competition, and there's a client and her friend, her business partner, and they said, "Hey, there's a clinician coming into town. Can we sponsor you and pay for you to be in this clinic?" Um, and his name, and they said his name, but in my mind I was like, I don't know who this is. And I had, up to that point, I had only seen the Buck Brenneman and the Clinton Anderson as clinicians
Mhm.
who worked horsemanship clinics with colts and problem horses. And so I said, sure, I'd love to. And I remember taking this 3-year-old Andalusian stud colt that was pretty pretty nasty, and I took him to this clinic. And I remember I showed up to this clinic as a participant riding in this clinic, and I look around and everybody has polos on, knee boot, everybody's in a snaffle, in a Western saddle, everybody's loping around on a droop rein, everybody's spinning, everybody's stopping. And I'm like, and my horse is rearing up and my horse is doing some funky stuff. And I was like, I am at the wrong clinic. Like I messed up. And so we sit around on our horses, and the clinician is Les Vogt, who
Yep.
obviously did the cow horse. And everybody's like, "Oh, I want to work on turnarounds. I want to work on stops." And he looks at me and is like, "Well, what do you want to work on?" And I was like, "Well, my horse is rearing up, so I want to fix that so he's not rearing up on me."
Yeah.
And so everybody's like, "This guy's a goofball. Like, what is he doing here?"
Yeah.
So Les was like, young man, I think you should probably geld that horse. That's probably where I would start.
Yeah.
And so I remember we had to put my horse away because he was disrupting the clinic, and they gave me another horse to ride that was a little bit more in the cow horse reining discipline. And
Which, like,
it
anything would be more that direction from
would have
what
been
you
better
had?
than what I was on.
Yeah.
And that in 2018 is where the love of a performance horse started for me. Where that was where the bug was, like, that's where I caught the bug. Where, man, these horses are cool. Like, they can spin, they can stop, the lead changes, loping on a loose rein. Because up to then, I'd been riding horses where I had to hold on, otherwise,
Mhm.
I was probably going to die.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, this is cool. And I remember Les being super nice and being like, you got good feel, you got good timing. You just gotta, if do you want to do this performance stuff? And I said, yeah, it looks really cool. And he's like, well, you gotta gear more towards the quarter horses. You can't be doing it with the Spanish horses. You can't be doing it with the dressage horses. And so at the time, I didn't have that luxury. I didn't have that option to be like, okay, I'm gonna close the doors to all these problem horses and just take in
Yep.
quarter horses. I didn't have the resume to do that. So that was a part of my story that was, when people ask, like, where did it start? It
Mhm.
was at that clinic where two clients were nice enough to take a chance on me to say, hey, you should go to this clinic because he's going to teach you a lot. And I did. I learned
So,
a lot.
was it their idea to take the 3-year-old Andalusian stud?
No,
Okay, so it wasn't
no,
like you were taking their horse or whatever.
no.
Okay,
They
I see.
thought that I knew who I was going to go ride with.
Yeah.
So when they said his name, I remember being like, "Oh, cool! Like, I get to ride with this person." But I had no idea who he was at the time.
Yeah.
And so when I got there and did a little more research, I was like, "Oh, dude, this guy's like legit. Like, he's
Yeah.
he's won a lot." And so
Yeah. So
then I
that
realized,
I think that brings up a good thing that's, like, pretty unique to where you're at now, and I don't think people realize especially if you're going to be a professional in the industry, like, man, there are so many just unwritten things in the horse world. So many so much assumed information, so much
Yeah.
unwritten stuff. And like I said, I didn't grow up in anything big time, but I grew up with my dad running a ranch and my mom being a horse trainer. So I saw like I you just have all these things you take for granted, right? Of like
Hmm.
there's this type of clinic or this type of clinic and this is what
Hmm.
like reining is or whatever. And I joke with a friend of mine who just he dated a horse girl in like high school and something and talks about going to the horse show. He was like, I felt like I was like a parent of someone whose kids went to Hogwarts, and then all of a sudden I came into like this other world I didn't know existed. He's like,
Yep.
that's what it felt like. I felt like a muggle coming in and like going to Hogwarts, and it was like this. And it's like, well, but then there's these kind of wizards and this kind of wizard.
Yep.
Like, and
Yep.
that analogy might not work with everybody, but I thought it was really funny how he
No,
described it.
I think that's perfect. I think that's spot on.
Yeah.
I think that's
There's all
spot
these
on.
just
And
assumed things. And so the thing is, like, man, what a testament to how there's not a lot of people who could just like smile and like grin that off. Like there's
it wasn't easy.
over
It was
50%
embarrassing.
of what over 50% of people would have been loading the horse trailer. Like
Yep.
even if they had the right horse for the clinic, if they had you had a 3-year-old like Woody B. Tough colt and it was disturbing the clinic enough that they asked you to put it away, people are loading the horse trailer for that, let alone like he doesn't
Yep.
even have the right horse or the right gear or
No.
anything like that.
No.
So
No.
that is a real testament to you, man. Like I'll compliment you on that. Holy cow.
I appreciate that, man. Um it was interesting because at that point, that would have been 2018. I was still very much like a nobody. And I still consider myself like at the very bottom of the pecking order even now. But at that point, like I wasn't even in the pecking order. Like I was like below
Mhm.
that. And so,
Yeah.
and so for me, people kind of knowing, because people that went to that clinic were local people. So they knew of me. So when I went there and had that moment, I was like, man, that's going to spread like wildfire that I was in this clinic and I brought this horse that wasn't even supposed to be there.
Yeah.
But I was like, no, this is an opportunity that again my clients paid for because they paid for the clinic and it was probably $600-700 for 2 days of riding with him. So I was
Uh-huh.
like, I'm not going to disrespect them and waste their money and be like, I'm going to bounce because my ego got hurt. And
Yeah.
so I was like, no, I'm gonna stay here and learn something, especially because I was like, this is kind of cool. Like when I got to turn the horse and stop the horse and he was very encouraging. Les was very encouraging through the whole clinic, where at the end was like, you got something kind of cool with who you are and what you're doing, but you got to have the right horses. And so that was 2017, 2018. So that's still in the back of my mind of like, I want to go that direction, but didn't have the luxury of doing it. So fast forward through the dressage horses, fast forward to going back to the barn that had fired me 5 years earlier because I was not a good stall cleaner, um, to now I'm there training horses. And I'm there for probably, I don't know, maybe 7-8 months. And the people were going to sell their facility and move to Texas. So I was like, crap, I got to move again. And it wasn't something that was like, when I'm going from from one barn to the next barn, you would think it was like, oh, he got kicked out. And I'm sure that's probably what was being said, was like, oh, he,
Mhm.
he messed up and now he's going to go to a different barn. But for me, it was like, no, I got another opportunity. I'm going to take that opportunity. I got this opportunity. I'm going to go to this opportunity. And it was always like that next move was always like a step above the one I was just in. So it was always like I was going further and further. It wasn't like I was regressing in what I was doing. So, um, it happened to be that there was a local facility that their trainer had just left, or they had something happened, and so I had reached out to her and I said, "Hey, are you looking for a trainer to train out of your place?" I probably have at the time had 15, 16 horses, in full-time training. And she was like, yeah, if you want to come out, check it out. So I went out and it was a really nice facility, and it was probably 20-minute drive. So it was still fairly close. And I moved there and I trained there for a total of almost 3 years. And again, the way life happens, or the way my life has happened, it's always been right place, right time. And so during that time, I the clients that had paid for me to go to that clinic with Les Vogt, they said, "Hey, Les is coming back. Do you want to ride in his clinic again?" I said, "Yeah, I'd love to." So this time I knew what kind of horse to bring,
Yeah.
not a rank 3-year-old Spanish horse. And so I went to this clinic and I brought a really nice 3-year-old reiner. And in the clinic, and I remember Les being like, "Wow, like there's a lot that changed in
Yeah.
you from the
So
last
in
like
this
three."
deal, have you competed yet?
So I had just started doing um, the Stock Horse Association.
Okay.
So the trail riding, the ranch pleasure, the
Mm-hmm.
cow horse, and the reining.
Yep.
So I was dabbling into that, but I was taking horses to the stock horse competition, horses that were not meant to compete at these shows. I was
Yeah.
taking
So
Spanish
were you
horses. I was
riding
taking,
client horses, or were you?
correct.
What I'm
So I
getting
was
at
riding
with that?
all clients.
Okay, that makes sense, because one strategy, and like, for example, this is a strategy I'm taking, is trainers who are in that world where it's like, I'll take anything. We're trying to like keep the business rolling, but I'd like to get to the show side of things. If pretty common advice is like, well, maybe you should invest in like one nice yearling or 2-year-old for yourself. So at the very least, you've got something to go and show, right?
So I did do that.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
that was my question.
I had one that was at the time for me was a nicely bred horse
Hmm.
that I could compete on, and I bought him for really cheap, but he was really well bred at the time. And so I'd take him plus clients' horses that were gypsies, that were draft horses, that were half thoroughbreds, whatever it was. I was like, let's go and let's compete.
Hmm.
And so because I was doing clinics now where I was traveling around the state, maybe a little bit in Washington, doing a couple clinics. I hadn't really traveled anywhere else. I had just done kind of local clinics. I hadn't gone anywhere else to clinic. And the Stock Horse Association was nice enough to say, "Hey, would you be a clinician for us at the shows?" And I was like, "Yeah, that'd be awesome. I'd love to." And so, and I was doing for the Stock Horse Association, I was doing okay. I was competing again with horses that shouldn't be. Like I remember one year I had a gypsy vanner, and it ended up being like number 2 in the country in the all around for reining and the cow horse and it was just funny because we put our farrier made special sliders for this gypsy. They were bigger. And this gypsy was sliding 15, 20 feet, doing lead changes, turning.
Yeah.
And it was just funny
That's
that
a
I
lot
was
of
like, man,
momentum to take into a slide.
a lot. And so it was just funny because you didn't expect to see that. And I think that caught people's attention, that I was willing to think outside the box and take horses in and be somewhat successful, even though some people would be like, "Oh, but it's just the Stock Horse Association." That I was kind of getting flack from the people that were competing at bigger shows
Hmm.
about how I shouldn't be validated yet because I wasn't competing at a what they would consider a higher level. And so, but
That's
for
funny
me,
that folks like that would even be punching down at the guy who's like playing with the gypsy vanners in the local stock horse. Like, why do people even want to care
you
to comment on that guy? That's wild.
it's the most interesting thing where me being the new guy and certain people, and when I say this, I want to say, I want to make sure it's clear where it's probably in total, at least that I know of, maybe 3 people
Hmm.
ever that I know specifically were the ones that were like, you know, in my head, the way I operate, those 3 people feel like it's like 50, 60, 70 people saying
Yeah,
it
you
because
got like the Nick Saban, Tom Brady thing where it's like there's one line in like some side column on the
yep,
ESPN magazine, and it's like, look what they're saying about this.
yep,
Like, look what they're
yep,
saying about this
yep,
program. Yeah,
yep. And
you're that guy.
yep, I won't hang on to the 99% positive comments. I'll hang on to the 1% that's being kind of funny, but I use that as fuel, as motivation to just keep pushing through. And so I remember being like, I can't wait to get really well bred horses to be able to compete at a higher level. But again, just like I knew I had to ride the rank horses, the problem horses in order to get the better horses, I'm like, now I have better horses competing in the Stock Horse Association. But now I know that I have to go through this in order to get to that next place. I have to put my time in. I have to make sure that I can work my craft. Because I've always said, if you can get a horse that's not bred to do this job, if you're able to get this job, the horse to do that job, imagine what you can do with the horse that's actually bred to do the job. It just,
Yep.
and so for me, it's like, cool. Like, let's try to get these things done with horses that should not be doing these things, so that when I do get these other horses, I will be ready to be able to do these things.
Yeah.
And
And
so,
that's again great advice, I think.
yep,
For any horse
absolutely.
trainer, I try to take that approach too, is like all my horses, I'm gonna take care of them, train them, and treat them like they're the nice one. So that way when I get the nice one, I'm prepared.
Yep. Yep. And that was a big part of it for me. And going back to what you said about having my own horse, I met a friend that I call him my uncle, but he's not really my uncle. He's just an older gentleman that is like family, and I met him through horses, and so I always call him my uncle. And he gave me advice during this whole process where he said, if you want to make this a business, you can't get attached to horses, especially
Mhm,
your own horses.
mhm.
If people ask to buy your horse, you sell your horse. And so I get that question a lot, like, aren't you attached to your horses? And I do. I get attached to these horses, but at the end of the day, it's a business. And so I have to be able to detach myself from things emotionally and be able to say, I have to make some money. So if I have a horse that I bought for myself and someone offers me money, I have to be able to sell it. And so my one of my first horses I bought, and somebody was like, "Hey, is that horse for sale?" And I said, "Well, no." And then they offered me at that time a good amount of money that I had never seen before. And so I was like, "For sure, you can buy this horse."
Yeah.
And so then I took that money, invested in another horse. That horse, again, I went somewhere and someone was like, "Is that horse for sale?" And I was like, "Well, no, but it can be." And so then I sold that horse, and kind of that whole thing happened where I've been able to get horses for myself, and then I take them somewhere and someone's like, "Hey, what's the story with that horse?" and sell
Mhm.
them. And so that's been a part of my business still a little bit, where
Yeah,
I buy one for myself and show it a little bit, and then people and I sell that horse. But that's a big
absolutely.
part of it for me, where that was a really great piece of advice, where you can't get attached. If you're trying to make it a business, like, you can't get attached. Like, it's at the end of the day, you have to run a business.
Yeah.
And so as much as I love the horses, as much as I love the horses that I've gotten for myself, um, I know that these horses are going to good homes. And so I have to run it as a business.
Yeah. No, I think that's sound advice too. My perspective on it is I've always felt that I could be born like 500 years ago, like on the Mongolian steppe, like just being around. I could be a pastoralist very easily, just how I'm wired. I could be around horses and cattle and just herds of animals and really appreciate that and feel really in tune in my life with my creator, all that sort of stuff. And for me, horse training is like, I don't have this giant ranch to go run all these critters on, but look at this. I'm able to provide for my family, which right now is me and my wife. And
Hmm.
I love these horses, but it might not be like I love this horse like it's my pet and they're part of the family.
Yeah.
It's the same way, like if you're out there following your herd of cows and then it's like time for us all to eat, right? Like, you go out there and you kill a steer, and it's like, man, look at what this animal is able to provide for us.
Right.
And
Right.
with the horses, it's not even that dire because usually they're going to a good home, but it's like,
Right.
yes, I'm selling this animal, but look what this animal was able to do for me. Like,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
able to pour myself into this animal, and then in return, I was able to continue on my journey. And so, like, I try to keep that perspective as far
Yeah.
as selling our personal horses is what gratitude I have towards that horse for being such a good animal that I could then utilize that animal to provide for my family. And
Correct.
I get a lot of positive energy from that
Yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. I think that's true, especially because these horses that, especially the last 5, 6 years that I've sold horses, people are paying at the time were 15, 20, $25,000 for these horses. And so in my mind, I was like, well, they're paying this amount of money. So they're for sure going to take care of this horse. Like they're just not going to buy it and be
Yes.
like, and that was in my mind a way to justify it. And it was reassuring when I would get updates. I went to the show with the horse and I won a buckle or I won a saddle or I did this and now, and so then I'm like, man, that's cool that like you're saying he's doing something or she's doing something for this family
Mhm.
that now the horse is serving a purpose, a positive purpose. That for me, it was like, okay, that was a good path for that horse to take. It was at my place, sold it. I made some money, which helped me because at the end of the day, we have to pay the bills. We have to feed our family. We have
Yeah.
to be able to live. But if it helps people in the same turn, then sure, why not? Like
Yeah.
it's a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, exactly. You and the horse coming together was a positive net outcome for both
Yep.
parties.
Yep.
Yeah,
And
that's
so,
great.
go to the Les Boat Clinic. I'm doing the stock horse stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and oh, so then I'm gonna back up just a little bit. So before I move into this place, the place I was at for 3 years, where I was doing the stock horse stuff, I'm at the place that right before it sold and the people moved to Texas. I got reached out. Somebody reached out to me and said, "Hey, we're filming a movie. Um, can somebody said you had some really good horses? Can we use your horses for a movie?" And I was like, "Sure." Like, and said this, we'll pay you. The movie's being filmed on the coast between Oregon and California. Can we use your horses? I was like, "Sure, that's totally fine." And I didn't ask about the movie. I just said, "I'm getting paid to be in the movie. Cool." And
Heck
in
yeah.
my head, I was like, "It's going to be this like low budget film." I was like, "Whatever." And so then I get a call probably 2 days before we're supposed to go down to film, and I think it was the producer that called me, and he said, "Hey, do you still have your beard?" And I said, "Yeah, I still have my." That's kind of a random question. I said, "Yeah, I still have my beard." He said, "Well, don't shave it, don't trim it, just leave it as scruffy as possible." And I was like, "Okay." He said, "One of the villains in the movie got sick, and we haven't filmed his part yet. Do you want to be in the movie?" And I was like, "Well, I've never been in a movie before, but I think that sounds fun." And he said, "We'll pay you for it. Cool." I was like, "Awesome." And so um, went down to film this movie, and I get there, and there's a trailer for makeup, a trailer for food, a trailer for clothes, for outfits, and I was like, man, this is a bigger movie than I thought it was going to be. And there were two people that were in Disney movies and Disney shows that were in this movie, and so I was like, this is a bigger movie than I actually realized it was going to be. And so I'm filming this movie, and it's unreal being on this set with these horses. So I took two dressage horses to this movie. One was some sort of warm blood, and one was another Spanish horse, which was a gray, really pretty gray
Mhm.
Spanish horse. And it was funny because looking back now, I had the Spanish horse. He had a really long tail, so I had it braided. And I remember now when I look back at the movie, I had unbraided his tail. So in the scene where we're walking away, his tail's like crimped,
Oh,
like
yeah.
so. The like how true the movie was in that sense. Like someone watching the movie that was a horse person would be like, "That's funny that the horse." in the
Yeah.
middle of the mud, in the middle of the rain,
Yeah.
that's crimped up like it had just been really taken care of. And so um, it's funny because we're filming a part of the movie where um, the other villain that I'm with, we are supposed to kidnap a person, and I'm supposed to shoot the one of the main actresses and kill her. And so my villain buddy in the movie gets off, hands me the horse, and so there's a cast of like 20 people on the side with the cameras filming while we're on the horses and filming this part where I shoot the main actress. He gets off to go kidnap her friend, and he grabs her, and she's yelling and screaming because we're kidnapping her. And he starts getting closer to the horses, and the horses, I could feel the one I was on, the Andalusian, he starts doing this, tensing up, and I was like, oh crap, but I had to hold it together because we're filming it, we're the cameras are hot, they're moving. And he gets about 5 feet from us, and the girl's like, it's supposed to be like an old frontier movie set in the late 1800s.
Yeah.
um, so the gal's like throwing her dress around trying to escape, and the horses just freak. And so the horses take off, and they run probably the length of a football field, and it's flat because it's just kind of behind, like you could see the coast, but there's a flat area where there's grass and stuff. And the horses take off for like the length of a football field, and I'm pulling on both, trying to pull them back. And finally, like, I grabbed the rein and dallied on one of the horns and pulled the horse off to the side, and they're both still kind of prancing around, kind of hot. And I go back to the cast, and then you see the director, and he's looking at me, and he's just like, and he just starts applauding, and he's like, man, that's why we hired you. That's why we hired you. Cause stuff like that. And so it was fun to be a part of that. And then, that movie ended up, we ended up doing a red carpet premiere in Idaho, which was kind of cool to be a part of that. They had movie posters, and the movie came out at Regal cinemas all over the country. And
Oh, no kidding.
so to have
So what was the
that,
movie?
the movie's called Rising Free, and it's
Okay.
on. It should be on Amazon Prime now. And the name of my character is George, and so I play one of the villains, and I end up getting shot, and I die in the movie. Kind of a spoiler alert. Um, but yeah, so Rising Free. It was a movie that came out, and it was kind of cool to be in that, to be a part of a production like that. That otherwise, I don't, being at a desk doing my office job, I don't know how else it would have happened. And so
Right. Yeah.
it was kind
That's
of
cool,
cool
man.
to,
I bet that
I
was a
was cool to,
blast.
it was fun, man. It was cool to just say that I did it, to be a part of it. And so fast forward, now I'm at the facility doing the stock horse stuff. I go to the Less Vote clinic, and at that point I'm like, kind of have the ability to start gearing towards the reining, because I'm like, this is what I want to do. So now we're talking about 4.5, 5 years ago ish when this is happening. And Les says uh, more encouraging words. Man, you've improved a lot in the last few years. Keep doing what you're doing. And he goes, here's my number. If you ever need anything, give me a call, shoot me a text. I don't care what it is.
Hmm.
I'd love to help you. And I was like, and that
That's
was the
really
first.
cool.
Yeah, it was unreal that a person of his success would believe in me when I've been hearing the few people say the crappy things they've been saying. But I'm like, here's this guy that did accomplished all these things, and he's saying that I'm okay, that I'm a decent hand. Like, cool. Like, and it was definitely a boost of motivation that I needed at the time, because
Mhm.
um, I always feel like when you're not doing a whole lot, people aren't saying very much. But the more you start doing, the more people start talking. And so, I kept telling myself that, like, okay, that's why it's happening. That's why people are saying things. A few people are saying things. And I was like, man, I want to do this. And I remember there was another gentleman. His name is Martin Padilla. He's out of California, and he was giving a clinic nearby. And I decided to sign up for his clinic. And in the clinic, I brought a 2-year-old that I had maybe had 2 months on, and this gentleman rides uh, in the higher level 2, level 3 in the reining. And so I was in the clinic. He hops on my 2-year-old, and he kind of kept looking at me. And then finally, in front of everybody, he goes, "Do you want a job?" And I kind of looked at him. I was like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "You started this horse?" I said, "Yeah, I've only had him for 2-3 months. Like, he's super green." And he's like, "I would hire you any day of the week. And you want to come down to California and start colts for me?" And I was like, "Man, I can't leave my business here." And he's like, "Well, if you ever want to just come down and just ride, like, here's my number, and call me, text me now." And again, I had another moment where I was like, "Man, this guy's riding at a high level, and he's saying that I'm
Mhm.
doing an okay job. Like, this is cool." And so I go back to the facility where I'm at for the 3 years, and uh, I had, again, right place, right time, a gentleman by the name of Tom St. Hilaire move into this facility. And at the time, I didn't know who Tom was, but I found out that Tom has he worked for Todd Bergen, um, and worked with, he was actually an assistant and then the best man for Bob Avila
Mm.
for a long time. And so I just happened to be now at the same facility as Tom. And so I learned a lot about reining, about horsemanship and reining, not just training and reining as a sport as a business, but the horsemanship side of it. Because I think he's a great horseman. He's always about the fundamentals and taking it slow and make sure things are right before you add speed. So I learned a ton from him and became actually really good friends with Tom.
Mm.
And to this day, him and I talk. And um,
Talk a
so
little bit more about the when you say horsemanship with reining, like how to develop a horse more as opposed to like this is the technical how do you teach a spin or
correct.
teach a stop?
Yeah, I feel like, and I think it's like this with any sport, but I think sometimes horses are treated like machines or like robots. Like
Yeah,
they're all supposed to do things a certain way. They all fit a cookie cutter mold of how to spin, how to stop. But I think with what Tom opened up my eyes to, and so did Martine, was that there was a horsemanship side of it that could also be incorporated, and it be something where you work as in a partnership and not you're just telling the horse this is how it's going to be. And so
uh-huh.
for me that was cool to see that, oh man, it can be done a different way where you can slow it down and not just hammer on the horse for things to be done a certain way. And so for me it was cool to see that, to be next to that every single day and ask questions, especially because I at that point now I knew that he had worked with some of the biggest names in the industry, and worked for some of the biggest names in the industry. And he's a cool dude, and we're always laughing. And for me, it's always hard to find friends in the horse world because I don't know what people's true intentions are sometimes,
Sure.
and it's hard to trust. For me, that's just how I am in general. I could be in a different career and it'd be hard for me to trust people. And so for me, it was kind of the same way, where it's been the same way in the horse world, where it's hard for me to trust people just because it's just how I am. But with Tom, it's been really cool to have that friendship. With Les, it was really cool to have that friendship. And um, I remember when I got Road to the Horse, and Les on his Facebook made a huge post about how proud he was of me, and how it meant a lot that I went to his clinic, and how we keep in contact. And then people messaged me, "Did you see what Les posted about you and Road to the Horse?" And so I went on and read it, and I got really emotional because I'm like, man, this dude that didn't know me from Adam, now we're at the point a few years later where he's calling me a friend and saying
Mhm.
that he's proud of me. And again, it's not me saying that I'm a decent hand. It's this guy who a lot of people look up to that take clinics from is saying that I'm a decent hand. So I was like, man, that was validating for me to have somebody like that be like, man, you're doing something cool. And so he would call me and every so often, and, hey, how are you doing? How's everything? And just like an old friend. It wasn't even like he needed anything from me or I needed anything from him. It was just the last few years. It was always like, hey, how you doing? And I remember a friend of mine, a client of mine, wanted to do a clinic with Les in Washington, but the clinic was full. And she was like, I signed up too late, so now I can't do it. And I was like, let me call Les. So I called Les and I was like, hey Les, there's a clinic you're doing in Washington, but it's full, and I have a client of mine that wants to be in your clinic. He's like, send me her name. I'll make sure she's in the clinic. And so I called my client. I was like, you're in the clinic. And she's like, how did you do that? And I was like, oh, don't worry about it. And so then, she went to the clinic and had a great time. And she was like, thank you so much for doing that. But that was just an organic friendship that happened through horses that, now Les passed away a month and a half ago.
Hmm.
And it was that was a hard one for me. I was at a horse show when I saw the news on Facebook, and not a lot of people knew why I was kind of off that day, and it was just kind of hard. It's still kind of it with how I'm talking about him. You can imagine that it was just kind of crappy
Yeah.
to get news, and but again, to have somebody like that to believe in me meant a lot, and and then the reality show happened where, so now we're fast forwarding a little bit now
Yep.
to where
Yep.
we're at. And I get a call from uh, the Discovery Channel.
Yep.
Hey, we're filming a show. One of the producers has been following you on social media. So again, the power of marketing. And they've been following you on social media and they think it's really cool, the stuff you post. Can we come interview you for 2 or 3 minutes for one episode? You'll just be like a small blurb in the episode. I was like, sure, that's fine. So they come out, film, and they send the content back to uh, New York for the headquarters in New York. And New York was like, who is this guy? Like, we want a little bit more of him. So then they're like, hey, can we actually stay 4 or 5 more days and film the whole episode of this now just on you? And I was like, yeah. And my story, the things I'd been through. And so they filmed for another week. And so there's a whole episode online on this reality show of me going through and talking about my life. And then they sent that content off to New York. And so I got called into a hotel in downtown Portland, and I met with these guys on a TV screen and 3 guys in a conference room. Then they're like, hey, we really think this could be something. Can we actually do a whole like series, a whole like show just on you? And I was like, yeah, like that'd be awesome. That'd be cool. And so they kind of got the ball rolling on that with Road to the Horse and stuff.
Yeah.
And
And this is all through Discovery, like you said earlier?
this is all through the Discovery Channel.
Okay. Very
And
cool, man.
now we're probably in 20, almost the end of 2022.
Hmm.
About, so again, I've a whole lot has happened in such a short time, because like I said, 2019 to 2025, everything was just been kind of a blur.
Yeah.
And so everything's happening so fast, and I'm saying yes to a lot of people, yes to a lot of things, and I'm not taking care of myself.
Well, that was
And
going to be my question, actually, is
yep,
so if a guy allows it, horse training can be one of the most unhealthy professions out there, I think. Between the travel, the impact on your body, and the hours causing, your diet,
emotionally,
exercise. Yeah. Yeah. You
emotionally,
don't
spiritually.
sleep,
Yep.
everything.
And I don't think sometimes, I think some clients, my clients right now are very good
Hmm.
at realizing this and being very present and receptive to what's going on with me. But I think at the time, I don't think it was the client's fault. I think it was just me not being open about how tired I was, about how exhausted I was emotionally, physically, and saying yes to everything, and thinking that I could truly do everything to the best of my ability. And then there were people around me at the time that I feel were not very good people, that were very negative people, that I feel like I put that on myself for allowing it to get to that point where people are being negative, and me not setting my boundaries, and me not being like, this is not okay, and separating myself sooner.
Mm,
I think it was definitely my fault, because I can't control other people's emotions, but I can control my reactions to it. I can control my response to what they're doing. At the time, I should have distanced myself sooner, and been like, I know you're going through your own stuff, and it's not it wasn't necessarily like a relationship. It wasn't like a friendship. It was just through the horse world. There were people that were around me that were just a very negative presence that, again, I should have been like, this is not something I want in my life.
sure.
And so, that was really feeding into everything that was happening. And so, um, I got to a point where I almost felt like I was like, I would almost, I hate saying the word depressed, but I almost felt like I was reaching a moment of depression,
Hmm.
because I was so exhausted from trying to make sure everything and everyone was happy. And I remember saying, I'm done. Like, I'm done. And I remember um talking to my mom. Of course, my mom's my rock. So I was like, Mom, I broke down. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And she said, well, come over, we'll talk. And we made a list, pros and cons of my life and how things were going. And um, uh, I remember being like, the bad stuff is outweighing the good stuff. And I know I need to walk away now. Outside looking in, the reality show was happening.
Hmm.
I was doing decent at the stock horse shows. I was getting, I think at the time I had 18, 19 horses in full-time training, which at the time was the most I'd ever had in training.
Hmm.
And so
It's a lot of
outside,
horses.
it's a lot of horses.
Hmm.
And outside looking in, you're like, man, things are like going really, really good. But I was sacrificing my own happiness, my own health in order for it to happen. And so I remember calling my clients and saying, I'm walking away. I'm done, and I'm not coming back. So this was almost 3 years ago, where I said, I'm walking away. I can't do this anymore. And I think certain clients later told me that they knew I was coming back, but they were respectful of the decision I was making at the time. And I had saved money away, where I said, if I leave for 7 months to a year and just travel and just leave, I'll be okay financially.
Hmm.
And so my mindset was, everybody leave, I'm leaving. And there was this huge weight lifted off my shoulders almost immediately when I made that decision to walk away. And
Yeah.
I was like, I knew that was the right decision because of how good I felt making that decision. And I said to myself that I was going to try to find myself through this process of it was dark, man. I mean, it was, I don't think this is the first I've talked about it publicly. A few of my friends know about this, a few of my clients know about this, but I don't think many people knew how dark it got for me at that point in time, where um, I didn't know what the next step was going to be.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so,
that's what I imagine is okay, so you're feeling burnt out. You're getting
mhm,
to the end of your rope. You sit
yep,
down, have big life conversations with your mom, who's your rock.
yeah,
But then to say I'm walking away, well, when the dust settles and the horses all leave, it's almost tougher because it's like you got to go figure out who Jonath is again. Because
correct,
when you're working, I mean, I know I've gone through that. When you're working that hard, like your identity is just that you're almost just a drone going and doing
yep,
everything.
yep,
Um, you almost lose a sense of self. So, and then when that happens, it's like, okay, well, I'm already here. And then the whole business goes away and everything happens. It's like you got to drop down lower. At least that's how I would think it would
that
happen.
that was definitely part of the thought process. And I had I had a client at the time who now turned into one of my best friends. Her name's Dana. Um, where I knew that she was a true, genuine person when I was walking away from all this, because she was a client at the time, and I said, "Hey, I think I have to walk away." And I remember her looking at me and saying, "I don't care that you are no longer JR Horse Training. That's not why I'm around you. I love you as a person, as you, Jonath Robles. And so when you're ready to come back, I'm still here as your friend." And I think that was the first time in a very, very long time that I had heard, I don't need anything from JR. I don't need anything from the business side of it. You
Hmm.
as a human being, you're super cool. So please take care of yourself. Go do what you got to do. But as your friend, I'm still here.
Yeah. You
And,
weren't
and so
defined by the value you could add to someone else's life.
correct. And that's when I knew that someone like that was again, it's hard for me to trust people. And so for me to have somebody say that to me was, in that moment, I don't think she knew how much I needed that with how
Mhm.
dark things were. But when she said that, it was definitely a big light in my life, that I was like, man, this person doesn't care that all this stuff is no longer here. She just wants to be a friend. And so, shout out to Dana, because she's just been such a solid person in my life. She's been such a good friend and a client still. She's still has 3 horses in full-time training in my program right now. And so she's just been a solid person. And um, so, yeah, so I walked away from horses. Everybody took horses home. And this is how, I don't even know if I should even talk about this, but this is how some of the crappy stuff of the horse world, where I had some clients call me and say, "Hey, this person I know you don't get along with, but they called me and they said, 'Hey, I know that you're leaving, or JR is leaving the horse world. You should come into my program.'" And so there were numerous trainers that were trying to, poach the clients that were
Oh,
with
yeah.
that had been with me. And and so my clients were like, "Thanks, but no thanks," or "Sure, whatever." But um, yeah, so that there's that happening, and I'm like, man, that sucks. Like, I haven't even been gone, because I made a big announcement on Facebook. I'm walking away, blah 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 blah. And I had a few people in the horse world reach out, like, "Hey, you can't walk away. You can't leave. We need you in the horse world. You're a good light in the horse world. And you can't." But I'm sure. And then there were the other people that were like, "Heck yeah! Like, I'm glad
Thank
he's
God.
gone." And so it was within 24, 48 hours that was happening. And I was like, man, that's such a slap in the face. And so more so, I was like, I'm glad I'm walking away. I'm glad I'm leaving.
Mhm.
And so I I made it a point to um, buy a one-way ticket wherever I was going, and never buy a ticket leaving, so I could stay as long as I wanted and do whatever I wanted. And when I was ready to leave wherever I was at, I can leave. I could leave and go to the next place.
Mm.
And so one thing I had never done is I wanted to visit big national parks. I was just something that I was like, I've been so go 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 go. I want to go somewhere that's quiet. I want to go somewhere where I could relax. And so I started going to different big national parks around the country. And one of the places I went to was the Grand Canyon. I'd never been, and everybody's like, "You have to go to the Grand Canyon. You have to go to the Grand Canyon." And you have to go at sunrise. That's going to be the best time for you to go. And I remember I drove there, uh, got on a shuttle bus, took me to a viewpoint, got out of the shuttle bus. Nobody else got off with me. Everybody else was going into a different viewpoint, and I got off. So I was by myself. And I remember sitting on the ledge of of the Grand Canyon. There's no railing. There's no nothing. I climbed the railing, went on the other side of the railing, and I'm sitting on the edge, and I'm just looking down, and it's still super dark. You can kind of see maybe the sun wanting to come up a little bit. And of course, in my head, I have so many thoughts. I have bad thoughts. I have good thoughts, because this is the first place I've been to after I had walked away. I
Mhm.
had no clients messaging me, "How's my horse?" I had no assistant asking me, "What horse do I need to saddle for you?" I had nobody, "Hey, the water's broke." I had none of that. My mind was just clear to think anything and everything. And I'm sitting there on the edge of the cliff, just looking down, and I mean, I'm talking about it's a drop, and I'm terrified of heights. So for me to be on that ledge looking down was uh, unlike me. And
Mhm.
so again, I'm thinking bad thoughts. I'm thinking good thoughts. I'm thinking about my mom. I'm thinking about a bunch of things. And then I remember, again, I'm starting to pray because anytime I'm in a good situation or a bad situation, my go to is to either pray and be thankful or pray and ask for some sort of strength to get out of whatever emotional situation I'm going through. And I remember sitting there looking down and I'm starting to pray. And I remember looking up and the sun starts coming up, and it was the coolest, amazing, beautiful, spiritual feeling where the sun started touching all the rocks and the brush and everything. And it literally looked like everything was just coming to life. The colors, the reds, the browns, the pinks. And in that moment, as the sun was like, you could see the shadows kind of moving where the sun was hitting, and everything was kind of coming to light where I could see everything. Um, I I broke down and I cried. I mean, I
Mm.
cried like a baby. I was like, I just let everything out. And I remember that being such a defining moment for me where I just literally was just like, I'm letting everything go. And I remember that being, I would say, probably the coolest moment of my entire life, being in that moment where my thoughts are going somewhere else. And then this moment happens and I come back to where I'm at. And I remember instantly I was like full of like energy and life. And I remember I booked a helicopter tour around the Grand Canyon. So I remember the helicopter going through, and I was like, man, this is so cool. And again, I had no messages from clients, no messages from assistants. And I'm like, man. And so went to different places, and then I went to Fort Worth. I went to Zion National Park. I ended up going to Miami, Florida, because I'd never been, and I was like, I want to go to the beach. I want to eat some seafood. And
Yeah.
so I remember I was in week 3 of my trip, and I'm in South Beach, sitting on the sand, eating a bowl of ceviche, and I'm just sitting there. And I remember that was the first time since I had walked away from horses that I was like, I miss horses. I really miss horses. And I was like, I want to go back. And I remember in that moment, I don't know if you were around during this time, but when, and not to, I'm not even comparing myself to this person, but just the way that it was announced when Michael Jordan came back from retirement, and there was the news article that said, I'm back. And there was just this
Yeah.
big headline saying, I'm back.
Yep.
That phrase, I'm back. I remember I text my clients, I'm back. Like, let's do it. I'm back. I'll be back this week. Let's get the ball rolling. I think it would have been October that I took off the whole month of October. So November 1st, I was like, I'm coming back. And to my
And you were
surprise,
able to get back in your facility and all that deal?
so this is where God absolutely works in incredible ways. And so I said, I'm coming back, but I knew I didn't want to go back to the situation that I was in.
Okay.
I knew that that was a big part of why I was so down and so burnt out. And so I announced on Facebook. Oh, so I text my clients, I'm back. To my surprise, every single client stayed and waited for me to come back. None of them left. I think I had one. I'm not, and that to me was completely understandable because they wanted a show horse and they couldn't wait around. They needed to go to a program and
Mhm.
get that horse ready to show. And so 99% of the clients said, we knew you were coming back. We were just waiting for you to say that you were coming back. And so they're like, okay, where are we going? And I was like, I have no idea where we're going. And so um, I remember that I remember posting again, and it's funny because I my life on social media is a lot of positivity, but it's also a lot of transparency. When I'm going through crap, I'll post about it. And I always get messages from people saying, thank you for posting that. I was going through a similar situation. whatever you were going through helped me through this situation. When I walked away from horses, I had two people tell me that they quit their job because I had walked away from horses. Because they said, if you were able to walk away from horses and we know how much you love horses, it was good. It was a sign for us that we needed to walk or quit our job and go do something different. And
Yeah.
they said it was the best decision of their life was to be able to do that. So for me, I've always felt that it was a good thing to post stuff like that because I know people are going through crap. Everybody's going through crap. And so if I can help somebody along the way, I have this really cool, unique platform
Mhm.
where if I can be a vessel for a message of positivity to help somebody, like why not? I've been blessed with this opportunity. It's I don't have to pay for this type of marketing. It's free. It's free to post on social media. So why not use this to my advantage to spread this message and help people out at the same time? And so I announced I was coming back, and so I had 5 or 6 different facilities say, "Hey, we want you to come back. We want you to come to this facility when you come back." And so I was going through all the facilities, and finally there was a place I was like, "This is pretty close to home. Let's go here." Went to this place, um, and I get there, and I meet a couple by the name of Herb and Colleen Malarkey, and they're boarders at this facility. And they meet me and, hey, we're glad you're here. But they were riding dressage horses at the time, and they're like, oh, nice to meet you. No, cool. We were just friendly chatter. All my clients move in. I'm back. I'm ready to just get after it. And Colleen comes up to me and says, hey, my husband and our family, we're selling a family business for a lot of money, and we want to build a facility. Do you want to be a part of it? And
Oh,
so
wow.
so you hear this, and I just came back from this place mentally that I was at, and now I have this person being like, hey, we want to build a facility for you. So in my mind, I'm like, there's no way. Like, there's no way that this is actually happening. And so they were saying something about like, this company's going to sell for $700 million. It's a roofing company. And I was like, and everything just seemed absolutely false. Like, it just didn't
Yeah.
seem like it was a real story.
Yeah.
And so 2 months later, Colleen said, hey, the company sold, but it sold for over $1 billion and like 1.3 billion or some sort of crazy number. And I'm still thinking like, there's no way that this is true. So she sends me an article of the company selling to somewhere in Europe for 1 point something $billion, a roofing company. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this is actually true. And
Yeah.
so she's like, we'll build you your dream facility, whatever you want, blah, 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 blah. And so uh they have a son named Drew, who now at the time I started getting to know him, and so now him and I we've become really close, and we call each other brother because his parents have treated me like a son, like genuinely have treated me
Wow.
like a son with the things that they have done, and him and I like now um, are in charge of running this whole new facility. So we ended up getting this facility completed about 11 months ago, 12 months ago, brand new facility, state of the art stuff, 180 by 270 arena with saltwater spa, 100 acres, TheraPlate, red light therapy. I mean, heaters above all the wash racks. I mean, anything you could possibly ever imagine in this facility. It's like Disneyland at this facility. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And the fact that like they had no idea, no plans of this happening. They didn't know the company was going to sell. They didn't know. And their idea was if they ever built something, it was going to be a small little facility. And then the way that everything turned out organically, if I would have stayed at this place completely burnt out where I was at, I never would have met these people. I
Yeah.
left, took time for myself, came back, and it's like here's a whole new start to your life. And now we're running a 43 stall barn, um, full training capacity. We have a breeding program. We have two big time studs that came in from Andrea's program. That again, uh, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, when I met Andrea for the first time, I was at a horse show, and my friend Dana was like, "Do you know who that is?" And I look over and I was like, "Oh, dang, that's Andrea." And she's like, "Do you see who he's riding?" And at the time, I didn't know who it was. And she's like, "That's Starjack Vintage. Like, I can't believe he's right there." She's like, "I love that stallion," and blah blah blah. So I go over, say hi to Andrea, and talk to him, and he had no idea who I was. He,
Yeah.
but he was nice enough to talk to me and ask where I was from. And I saw Starjack Vintage there, massive stud, Palomino, beautiful horse. And I was gonna go compete. I'm in the warm up pen, and Casey Deary's there, Jason Van Landingham, Craig Schmersall, Andrea, and I'm in there with this little Palomino filly that I trained from the ground up. And I'm like, man, like in my head, I'm like, I made it. Like I'm here. I'm competing against these big names, and
Mhm.
the fact that Andrea took time to even acknowledge my presence or my existence, I should say, meant the world to me. And so when when my clients were shopping, they said, where would you want to shop? And I said, I'd love to shop with Andrea. Like that'd be amazing. So I messaged Andrea, and we talked on the phone. And um, I know, like I have Andrea's phone number at the time. I'm like, I cannot believe like my life has turned into where now I'm texting Andrea for these incredible horses. And so I flew out to Arizona, tried 6, 7 horses, and there's a roan stud that I show. His name's Wow. His registered name is Sochik, and I broed him, and I was like, I love this horse. I called my clients, and they're like, "What's the price?" Said the price, but again, in my mind, I'd never dealt with
Mhm.
numbers like this, and I said the price, and they're like, "Do you love him?" And I said, "I love him. He's incredible." And they're like, "Okay, we'll wire the money tomorrow." And my mind was just like blown that now I go from a free horse on Craigslist that was a crypt orchid,
Yeah.
years back, to now I'm riding this stallion that's worth hundreds of thousands of dollars is crazy. And so um, being able to have that connection with Andrea, and we've bought more horses from him, and he's been nice where throughout the year he is always like, how did this horse do? Can you send me a video? Do you need any help? And the fact that this guy's they have 92 horses in their program full time. So the fact that he's still, hey, do you need help? Hey, can I
Mhm.
help you? And when we're at shows, he's like, what, do you need help with anything? How are your horses? And so the fact that I get to message him or call him um, still absolutely blows my mind. And so fast forward to a year ago, we had the opportunity to purchase Starjack Vintage, who just 3 years ago, my clients were fangirling over this stud in the arena. And now this horse is at our barn now as
Mhm.
one of our studs that we get to ride and promote. Um, like when I tell you that my life um, is an absolute dream, like if you had asked me in 2019, 2020, please write down your wildest dreams and what you would want to happen in your life in the next 5 years, I don't think a fraction of what happened I could have even I concocted in my head to be like, oh, I'm this facility, and oh, these horses, and oh, having this relationship with Andrea, and having that type of communication where I can call him or text him whenever I need something.
Mhm.
Um, and now my clients that are with me having 2 or 3 horses in full-time training, where I can't I can't imagine where, so our board and training is 1850 a month. That's full-time training, full care board for everything. 3 horses in training, you're talking what, almost a little over 5,000, maybe 5,000, $6,000 with vet care, with farrier, with a month. Like that's 5 times somebody's mortgage, 3 times somebody's mortgage. And the fact that these people are trusting our program and trusting me to take care of their horses, to show their horses, is is baffling. Is so I'm so appreciative and so grateful that these clients are seeing what the program is doing and what it's turning into, and trusting me that what we're doing is the right thing.
Mhm.
And and I still hear the negative chatter of like, oh, he's riding horses that came from Andrea, so of course he's doing well. And
Right.
you can have, I'll compare it to an instrument. You can have the nicest guitar, the nicest violin in the world, but you still got to play the guitar. You still got to play the violin. It's not
Yeah,
going to play it.
absolutely. Yeah, and you
And
still
so,
gotta keep the instrument tuned.
absolutely. And that's where I go, where I said earlier, like, man, it's so intimidating. Those are such big shoes to fill, to think that I'm riding these horses that this guy
Yeah,
trained and showed. And I have to go out and try to do some of what he did with these horses. Is again, we were talking about 50% of the people would be like, I'm out. Like, this is I
yeah.
can't do this.
So,
And so,
uh, just to get a clarity on the timeline, I didn't mean to cut you off,
no,
but
it's okay.
as as far as the showing goes, like, last time we touched on the showing, you
Yep.
were, like, doing the stock horse deal with the Gypsy Vanner.
Yeah.
Did that just kind of organically evolve to, like, from the stock horse to what I assume is NRHA shows, and just
So
as your client's ambition kinda grew, you got put in those situations?
so when I took that break and came back, I had my client at the time, Dana, had purchased a mare in Ohio and brought her into the program, and I had a little filly, um, that those were my two show horses. That's it. That's all I had in 2023. Those are the only show horses I had for NRHA. So I had stopped doing stock horse, and I
Mhm.
was like, we got to do the NRHA. And so I was like, I got to start somewhere. I don't care if it's with one horse, with two horses. I got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So
And in some ways, that's,
2023,
like, the best way to get involved is, like, bring 2 horses to the show
yeah,
and just, like, focus on that and not have to, like, run the team like, you can just focus on JR and it's like, JR's showing, JR's got these
yep,
2 horses, like, it's very manageable while you
yeah,
learn the game. Because
it is.
going from stock horse to NRHA, like, it is a new game to learn, just, like, logistically
Yeah,
managing the show.
it's a whole different animal. It's a whole different beast. And I remember going to that Derby with my little filly and Dana's mare, and that's the show where I ran into Andrea for the first time on Starjack Vintage. And I'm so pumped, I'm so motivated, and my client, she's spending money on my hotel, on the fuel, on the entry fees, on my daily fee. And so I go in Derby day, I'm ready. I'm ready to go out there and get a good score on her mare. And I go out there, and this is my first big derby. Like, I walk out there and I feel like this stadium is like a huge coliseum, and I'm like this little fish in a huge fishbowl. And I go in, turn 4 to the right, turn to the left. Had no idea that I turned 5 to the left. And
Mm.
so I'm automatically a 0. I have no idea that I overturned. So I go through the whole pattern, and I'm gunning it. I'm running this pattern because I think that I'm still in it. I think that I turned 4. And I walk out of the arena. As I'm walking out, JR, or at the time people were still saying Jonas Robles, and the mayor, 0. And I was like, what? And so I'm walking down out of the tunnel, and my client looks at me and she goes, you turned 5. And like, I'm talking about, I wanted to crawl under a rock, because she had spent all this money, all this time on this really nice horse, and for me to go in there and mess it up and to 0.
Mhm.
Man, that messed with me for a while.
I bet.
And it was tough, because I was there to prove myself that I could make the jump from the stock horse to the NRHA, and I was ready to prove people wrong. And I'm sure the people that were watching, that were like, "Oh, here we go! Like, we're gonna get to see this guy make a fool of himself." I'm sure when that happened, they were like, yeah, like, I'm sure they were at home happy that
Mhm.
that it happened. And so I think any other client in that situation probably would have been like, we're pulling the horse from your program because that was embarrassing. But it was the complete opposite. Dana was like, hey, you know what? It happened. Let's get it back next time. The horse is staying in your program. And the
That's
next
awesome.
show, we ended up doing really well at the next show with that mare, and so uh, that was my introduction into the NRHA world. Was a big derby where I didn't do very well,
Yeah.
and but I again 50% of the people would have been like, this isn't for me. I couldn't do it on that stage, so I'm going to back out. And so um, after that, um, clients kind of started to trickle in little by little by little. And then but around that time is when Colleen and Herb were also in my life, and they were like, let's get you a horse that you can show and you can promote. And so that is what took the program yet to a whole other level
Yeah.
of horses, of stock, and just horsemanship in general, because now I had access to Andrea, who would help out if I needed something. I had Tom in my corner, Tom St. Hilaire. I could ask Martine, where these people were very successful, and I was like, man, I can pick their brain. And so I made numerous mistakes. I think I overturned at another show with the Roan stud, and that was embarrassing. And so I'm going through these moments where I'm sure other people would have been like, I'm walking away because I've already messed up too many times. I can't do this. And so but I kept at it. And so now I'm very fortunate that, again, all the pieces started kind of coming into play, where some of the horses that we got into our program, they were what you would consider rejects from other programs, where they weren't doing very well in other programs for whatever reason.
Hmm.
Um, and when they came into our program, we kept working with them, and now these horses are marking 215, 217, 218, and so it's like, man, these horses are doing really good, and these clients that knew these horses weren't doing the best now have seen that I've brought these horses along
Yeah.
to be successful horses. So I think that's also drawn more clients into our program. And we go to a show, and I have my assistants, I have my clients, everybody has their JR stuff. Our stalls have all the JR logos. We have our pop-up banners. And so we've come a long way from where we were at even in 2023 with two horses at a derby.
Yeah.
Now we're taking 14 horses, 17 horses, 19 horses to a show, and everybody's going and being competitive. And I'm going out and being competitive and having some success and winning money and winning trophies. Um, and so it's been a uh, unreal. I don't know how else to put
Yeah.
it, because
Yeah.
you think
That's
about,
crazy
yeah.
acceleration.
And so for me, it's um, I don't know what I was thinking when we moved into this new facility. I've said this kind of recently, where I said, once the new place is up, it'll be open and everything's going to be great. Like, we're no stress, like magically everything's just going to be, and
Yeah.
man, I was wrong. I we now everything is just amplified. Everything, there's more stress, more horses, more staff, more overhead. The tractor broke. The saltwater spa needs something. The hot walker needs something. The footing itself is a whole science experiment, because you got to get the footing correct for reiners to stop at a certain depth and a certain moisture level, and that
Yeah.
whole thing is a whole experiment on its own. And trying to breed the mares that we have to the right studs that we have to promote our program. But again, we have the right team at our program right now. I have some Drew, who I was talking about, who's like a brother now, who's Colleen and Herb's son. Dana, there's a gal named Kristen who's a barn manager. My one of my main assistants, Kirsten, she rides all the babies, and so before I was starting all the babies, and so now her and another gal named Rachel, who's another assistant of mine, they tag team on the babies together. And
Hmm.
so they get the baby started. And once the babies get to a certain point, then I take the babies over and start getting them going. And so to me, having a team that when we go to shows. And recently, a new addition to the team is Leo, who's a full time groom, which I never had ever in my entire life. We always had our assistants were also the grooms who would
Sure.
tack horses up and ride. And now we have a full time groom. All he does is tack, untack, bathe, put the horses away. And so he's tacking up horses for three of us to ride each day. And so for him, he's been a godsend because he's such a hard worker. And he's 18, 19. And the fact that, I hear a lot of people, man, it's hard to find good help, or man, this younger generation. But I tell you what, I have him who's 18, Kirsten, who's I believe 19 now, who's the colt starter. Those two together, just their work ethic alone, like I'm so lucky to have those two people in my program. And then all the other pieces like Rachel and again, Dana's been a part of my program forever, so she kind of knows the ins and outs of everything. And so it's like a NASCAR team where everything
Yeah.
has to be the right way, otherwise things fall apart. If someone drops the ball, someone else has to pick up the ball and keep it going. And I had at a show recently this last week where um, we were doing the draw party for the Derby, and I had a lady come up to me and she said, she goes, "I don't know how you do what you do." And I was like, "What do you mean?" And she's like, "I know how much stress you have on your back and how much pressure you have on your back. Not many people can do what you do and still continue to have it run at a level that you're running it at." And she's like, "It's really impressive." So I needed to tell you that was something that I just noticed, that not a lot of people could be doing
Mm.
what you're doing, and it's impressive. And it kind of took me back a little bit in a good way, where I was like, I had to be proud of myself that even through everything that's happened, all the changes, all the struggle, that we're at where we're at. And I've always said the it's not easy, but the easier part in horses is to get somewhere. I've always said the hardest part is to maintain that position, because I
Yeah.
think a lot of people can get to a certain point in the horses and have some success and then either plateau or completely fall off, whether it be the horse side of it, the people side of it, or the business side of it. I've always said, so getting to a certain place, I feel like I'm not saying it's easy, but it's the easier part of it too. Getting there is the easier part. Maintaining it is the hard part, and that's why,
I think
uh,
that's true for a lot of businesses.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I would totally agree with you. And like, yeah. Well, and it's tough too because like you're from the sounds of things, you're starting to play at the highest level, right? So
Yes,
you're
sir.
like maintaining, but also part of that maintaining is you've just got to keep growing.
You
Not
have to.
necessarily like getting bigger, but like producing nicer horses,
Yeah.
getting more done, whether it's with you or with the non-pros or whatever. Like you're trying to grow the brand you're associated with. And
Absolutely.
so it's like that's what maintaining is versus in the beginning. I know it feels like a grind at the time, but then when you sit down and we condense it to like the 3 hours
Yeah.
we've been talking, and it just sounds like a rocket ship, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
now this is probably in some ways more of the grind because you've just got to keep gradually growing.
You have to, if you want to keep it at the level that it's at, you have to. And I
Uh,
think, people talk about work life balance, and I'm wired in such a different way, where obviously I pushed myself to my limit, but I know where my limit is at now, where I had to walk away because I was so burnt out. But I know where my limit is at now, where I've treaded very close to that that bar, um, even in the last couple years. But I've been able to manage it where I can take so where we're located at, the coast is probably 45 minutes away, 50 minutes away. So I can go, and I've made it that no matter what, Sundays for me are my days off. Sundays, I don't go to the barn. And obviously, if I'm at a show, I'm at a show. If I'm at a clinic, I'm at a clinic. But if I'm home, I can't go to the barn. I told
mhm.
myself that for me is my mental day where I get to recharge. And so there'll be times where Saturday after the barn, I'll go to the coast get a hotel, wake up, walk around the beach for a little bit, recharge, and then come back and be ready for Monday. And so that's my like work life balance. That's where
Yeah.
that's the extent of it. And so for me, even that little bit of a change has been huge for me, where I was able to recognize where that limit is,
Mhm.
where I don't want to get burnt out, and my clients don't want me to get burnt out. And so and again, people being like, hey, um, we see that you're getting, and I've had clients call me, hey, are you okay? We saw that you were a little bit stressed. We saw that you were a little bit overwhelmed. Is there anything that we can do? So
Mhm.
having clients that care enough to call um, is incredible. I have a client, a family client, the Dunn family. They have 2, 3 horses with me at any given point in the year, and they trusted me to search a horse for their younger daughter to ride, who's a really cool 3-year-old. And they're always, hey, how's it going? And the dad always calls me, hey, how's it going, cowboy? How's life? How's the day? And so to just have clients care enough to call and say, how are you doing? And not just be like, how's my horse? It's, how are you
Yeah.
doing? Because
Mhm.
sometimes at the beginning with them, when they would call, they're like, how's it going? I'd be like, oh, your horse is great. And then he'd be like, no, 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 no. We'll talk that's secondary. Like, how are you doing? How's your day? And so it feels good to have people like that in my life that um, care enough, that know when they can see things are getting a little bit stressful, a little bit overwhelming. And sometimes even they call me and don't even talk horses. How are you doing? Oh, all right. Well, I'll talk to you. I just wanted to see how you were doing, and then see ya. And so it's
Mhm.
like, man, that was kind of nice to have that kind of phone call with a client.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
and to be fair, kind of bring this whole thing full circle, I would bet money the reason you have clientele like that is going back to what you derived from that Brandman clinic where you're like, I want people to see me as a good person. I
Yep,
want to be the good person first, and then I can help you with your horse.
correct. And
Yeah.
I think we're all human and we're always working on something or multiple things. And I think for me, that part of exactly what you just talked about, sometimes for me is a double-edged sword, because I try to be such a good person that sometimes I almost let certain things slide
Mhm.
that
You
I
let the
shouldn't.
boundaries get blurred.
Yes. And I feel like that's sometimes where I get myself in trouble, where I get more stressed out because I blurred the boundaries of, like, I probably should have said no to doing all that extra work, or said no to extra this or extra that. I should have said no, but
Mhm.
because I want my clients to be happy, I'll say yes. And so I think that's sometimes where I wish I've gotten way better at it, but that's one thing that if I'm thinking about just me as a person, where I wish I could get better at, it still be continue to have a little bit more boundaries, and not always just say maybe or yes to a lot of things.
Yeah.
Um, and
Eh
so I think it's a double-edged sword for sure.
yeah. And I think the perspective you have to have because I'm the same way. I think a lot of people, like type A people they're people pleasers, right?
Oh yeah,
And the perspective I've had to have on it is if I'm going to best help my clients, the horses, my wife, the people that work for me,
yeah.
it's not fair to them for me to not draw boundaries and then burn out.
Oh yeah, I
So
agree.
so in an effort to best serve them, I can best serve them when I am sustainable. And when you're
Mhm.
giving 100% to everyone else, you're not sustainable. There's not that Sunday walk on the coast where
Yep.
you can you can go and refill your cup spiritually or
Mhm.
mentally or whatever is lacking or you just I don't know about you, man. Sometimes on my day off, the thing I like to do the most is like I'm gonna like just exercise for an hour, like
Oh man.
uninterrupted because I've been
Oh man.
physically working a lot, you know?
Hmm.
It's like that's one thing about horses for me is like, yeah, you're physically doing a lot, but that it's different between doing that and like maybe intentional exercise or even
Man.
just going for a walk or like I'm gonna do
Yeah.
something that's gonna make my body feel good instead of just like low horses all day or whatever.
See, so I guess there's two things I want to work on because that's another thing I need to do. I need to exercise more. I do, I ride probably a day. I'm riding 16 to 18 horses a day, just myself. And
Mhm.
so I get some sort of exercise and people see the way that I eat and I eat terrible. And so you would think that I'd be, 300 pounds, but the fact that I ride so many horses, but you're right. I go and do something completely different, like some sort of physical activity, and I'm like, I am out of shape. Like I need to do something a little different. And so I think that's one thing that I wish on my days off that I could I would want to do like a little bit more of is some sort of physical activity where I can run a little bit or play basketball. I miss basketball.
Yeah.
That was another thing. My life is a little crazy. After college, I went and played professional basketball in Mexico for a little bit.
Oh, no
And
kidding.
yeah.
That's
And
cool.
so that was a part of my life where I loved basketball and that was my thing. I'm not very tall, so I get a lot of crap about, man, you played basketball. Some of my clients give me crap like you played basketball and so I loved basketball. That was my thing, before horses, that was my thing. And so now I think that was a part of horses too, why I was able to do stuff with horses because I was coordinated. I had hand-eye coordination because of sports, but
Yeah,
then the
that matters
psychology.
a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's funny being able to look back and be like, I can't believe some of these things that I went through, and now I'm able to incorporate some of that stuff. And it's just it's crazy to think back on that, and you know, and for me, I think one of the biggest takeaways um, in horses, and I think even in life, is what we're talking about with family and a wife and kids, and the what you're willing to sacrifice and what you're willing to give up in order to make things happen in your career. I
Mhm.
think for me, I think um, I've lost friends, I've lost girlfriends because of this path that I've been on, and I think for me, I could ask the question, "When are you getting married?" You know what,
Oh, yeah.
and so for me, it's like, um, it's a question that I've tried that, but I travel so much throughout the year. I'm always on the road, so for me, it's hard to be like, "This is fair to the other person that I'm with." Like, is it fair? And at the end of the day, like, it's not fair because someone wants somebody there with them. Someone wants that companionship. Someone wants that relationship. And so for me, it's been really hard to even friends like my buddies that I'm talking about. They have an annual guys trip that we've done for 12 years now. In the last 2 years, I've missed because I've been at shows or I've been at a clinic and
Mhm.
stuff. I see their pictures of camping or golfing, and I'm like, man, that looks fun. Like, man, that would be cool to wish I could,
Yeah.
do that.
Yep.
And so for me, it's hard because um, I would love to have that exactly what you're talking about, where I can have that home life, I could have a wife, I can have the kids, and be able to be like, I'm going to be able to balance this. But I know that at this point in my life, I know that I wouldn't be able to. I can't, and that's such a hard thing for me to accept because earlier in the conversation I was like, I pictured myself in a townhouse. I pictured
Yeah.
myself with the family and the kids, and that's in the Latin culture and the Mexican culture, that's just a part of what you do. You have a family, you have kids, you're married, that's just you have the family gatherings and stuff. And so for me it's a little hard when my aunt or somebody, hey, we're having a party and with the kids, and and it's like, okay, cool, like I'm coming by myself, like I don't I don't have a
Yeah.
spouse to
Yeah.
bring to these events. But I think that's what makes it a little bit more doable, is because that part of my life at the moment isn't existent, where I don't have that person. And ideally, obviously, I would want to have that person, which it seems like that you do, which is I'd love it. I'd love to hear that. That's someone that you get to share it with. I think that
Mhm.
ideally would be what I would want, is someone that I could share the business with, because I would hate it to be somebody that I have to call and, hey, how was the clinic? And oh, I worked on this, this, and this, and the person be like, well, what is that? What do you mean by that?
Sure.
What does
Yeah.
it mean to spin a horse? And what, and then set to have to break it down that much, it just kind of takes away from the excitement. So I would love to have somebody in my life that I can be like, yeah, I did this, or that person be there with me being like, hey, that was cool that you did that, and have that support system. And so it's kind of like, again, what are you willing to sacrifice in order to have that part of your life, and what are you not willing to sacrifice to be able to be where you want to be? And so I think that's hard, because I do look at Andrea, he has his wife. Casey
Mm-hmm.
has his wife, and all those guys. And you look at the top tier trainers, and they all have their wife that are supporting them in that part of their career and their life. And it's like, man, that'd be absolutely awesome to have. But I know that I can't force that. I know that I can't go out looking for that. I know that it has to organically happen, where I'm going
Yeah.
to have to meet somebody that I can share this with, and have it be something that it's a partnership, which is, I know, like I said, it's hard. It's hard because of the, how can you trust people, and then the loyalty factor with clients and assistants and friends and just random people. Like, how can you, it's hard to navigate it. And it's stuff that even now, it's almost funny for me to think about, because here's a great example, like a really perfect example, where I'm very meticulous and very careful about what I post on social media, because my sponsors are always watching, my clients are always watching, potential clients are always watching, potential sponsorships are always watching. And so if there's something in there that someone doesn't like, you're losing a part of the market that you don't want to lose. You're shooting yourself
Mm-hmm.
in the foot. And so I can control that part of myself. But when I have people attached to the program that they're posting certain things, or they're doing certain things online, or whatever the case may be, but they are associated with the program,
Yeah.
and that's like, how can you control that? How can I tell somebody, hey, that's not okay for you to post, when it's the everything that kind of goes with that, where it's their page, it's their stuff, they can do whatever they want. But it's hard to micromanage every single thing and every single person. I think that's a hard part, that when people are thinking horse training, that's not even a thing in their mind that they're thinking
Yeah.
about. Like, I gotta navigate that this way. And
Mm-hmm.
the politics, the religion, whatever the case may be, having to navigate that, where whatever you post, have it be authentic, but also have it be where you're not on this side, but you're also not on this side, because you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot and cut people out of
Yeah.
that business.
What did Michael Jordan say? Republicans buy sneakers too.
Yep. He did say that.
Yeah.
And see, stuff like that, where he was very on the fence when people were asking him to do stuff politically, that he was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna do that, because for what? There's no point. And so for me, I have to be, I've created something very special, and I know it's very special. And people have helped me create what it is now, that I'm so protective of what we've created, that anything that can kind of mess that up, I'm very careful about trying to nip it in the bud, so that it doesn't affect it in a negative way. Because even small things, like, for example, sponsors, where I have certain things that are sponsored. And so in pictures, I have to be careful about what saddle pads I'm using, what saddles I'm using, because if I use something different, it goes against my contract, and I lose my contract, and I lose that sponsorship. And so my assistants, sometimes they're tacking horses up, and we have 99% of our saddles are Bob saddles.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, if we're posting a video or something, I can't post in a different saddle. It's got to be a Bob saddle. And so my assistants, it's funny, because they kind of laugh when they first come into the program, because they're like, why does that matter? And then when they really start to think and listen to what I'm saying, it's like, it's a business, and we have to run it as a business, and we have to be careful about what we post. And so I think that part of it, I think sometimes gets overlooked when you're thinking about the business side of it, where sometimes people, it's just social media. But social media was a big factor with me and Road to the Horse. A
Yeah.
big reason why I was looked at for Road to the Horse was because of the social media aspect.
Yeah, that's
And
a
so,
big deal for Road to the Horse. I
yep,
think that's where a lot of the contestants are derived from.
yep. And so that's where for me it's like, man, if I never would have had that person years ago telling me, hey, you need to have social media, it never would have trickled into or turned snowballed into what it turned into, where I on paper, when I got chosen for Road to the Horse on paper, there was no reason why I should have been at Road to the Horse. Like
Mhm.
everybody else that was there, their resume was long. And I even remember when they were announcing us for Road to the Horse, every competitor that was announced before me, they were like, this person champion won this and buckle here, blah, 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 blah. And there was this resume. And then it was like in JR, NFR, the cold starting. And it was that one thing that was like, oh, and so it was like, dang, like that was. And so I think in a lot of people's eyes during that cold starting competition for Road to the Horse, I think people were like, oh, this guy's, he's, what is he going to do? He's not going to do anything.
Mhm.
And so I think that Road to the Horse event catapulted our program into a whole different category after it happened the way that it happened. Because I think I won at the wild card. I think I won 3 rounds in a row, and that had never. I don't think that had ever happened before. I think someone won 2 rounds and then lost one, or won the first round and lost the second one, and won the third, whatever the case may be. But the way that I won the competition by as many points as I won, there was this is the chatter online that was a lot of people were saying that the horse that I drew was already started, that was already green broke, because there's no way that I could have done what I did in such a
Mm.
short time, because I was the
Mhm.
first one to get on my horse. I got on him bareback and I rode him around, and through the obstacle course he went through and did everything. And so um, I had somebody that was a part of Road to the Horse come up to me after and say, after the one in Kentucky, say, hey, I thought you drew a horse that you got very lucky to draw at in Texas, but then in Kentucky you had to draw 2 horses, and both horses I was able to hop on bareback and ride around. And then that person said, there's no way that this person drew 2 lucky horses again. Like at this point, it's just him as a horseman and what he can do with the horses.
Mm.
And so that whole thing, that whole Road to the Horse thing is a whole event all on its own, because when I when I went to Kentucky, I had already won 3 rounds in a row in Texas at the wild card.
Oh, so they did
That
the wild card separate your year?
separate. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
And so when I went to Kentucky, I won the first round, and everybody was like, shoot, now he's won 4 rounds in a row. And then I won the second round, and they're like, shoot, now he won 5 rounds in a row. And so and I shouldn't have done this, but me being the person that I am, I went through the comments on social media on the Road to the Horse page, and everybody, I heard all the good stuff, the bad stuff. I was going through every single comment,
Oh,
and I'm like,
man.
why am I
That's
torturing?
rat poison, dude. I don't think mentally, that is not
Uh,
good for anyone to do that.
it was terrible, man. I think the second day, after we won the second day, um, I remember being like, okay, I gotta stop torturing myself like this. I can't go on social media tomorrow with it being the last day. I just can't. And I remember telling my team, pulling them aside before the third round started, the third day. And again, I'm ahead at this point, and I said, I don't know what's supposed to happen today. And it was weird that I had this thought all week in Kentucky. I had this weird gut feeling that we weren't going to win in Kentucky, but that something crazy was going to happen. And I don't know what it was that kept it was a nagging feeling. And I remember that Sunday morning, I pulled my team aside and I said, hey, if we don't win, it doesn't matter. We've done something already that nobody else has done. We won 5 rounds in a row. We've come in here with horsemen that I I looked up to, that I consider incredible horsemen, and now we're here competing against them. Whatever happens, happens. I don't care. They agreed. This is awesome. The whole experience is already amazing. And so then I don't know if you remember what happened at that Road to the Horse. I go into the round pen with my horse. I'm the last one to go in because that's how they drew, was the one that's leading the competition goes last.
Mhm.
And so I'm underneath the Coliseum hearing everybody cheer for every other competitor. And so, there's 5 of us backstage, and then there's 4 of us, and there's 3 of us, and I'm the last one. And so I go out there with my colt. I go through the round pen session, and my colt stops, is doing rollbacks on the round pen. My horse is loping off out of the rollback. My horse is doing walk, trot, canter. My horse is side passing. And I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. And then I take my horse out of the round pen, and I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. And then he gets a little stuck somewhere, and I'm starting to sweat. And then we get through that obstacle, and then he gets a little stuck again, and then I'm starting to sweat even more. And then we get to the point where we get to the tarp, and the horse starts kind of humping around. And I remember I got thrown on the horn of the saddle, and I tried to pull myself off, and I ended up ripping my jeans. And there's a big hole in my jeans as I'm sitting on this colt. So I'm like trying to cover my jeans because there's a big hole where the horn ripped my jeans. And I'm going through this obstacle. And then I remember at one point, I think we reached the obstacle with the rope, where I'm supposed to reach over, grab the rope, and rope something and drag it. And I remember the horse. This is going to sound another cliche moment. I remember the horse, like, it was kind of an out of body experience, and I remember the horse like looking up at me and almost saying, like, dude, I can't do this anymore. And it was weird having that dialogue with the horse telling me, hey man,
Yeah.
like, I just can't. And that's when I made the announcement, and I stopped. And the horse it was funny because the horse had been kind of jittery up to that point in that obstacle. But as soon as I took a breath and I announced, like, hey, I don't know if anybody's ever done this, that horse like completely just like sat there, like just like a statue, and just hung out there, just letting me announce to everybody that
Mhm.
I got to stop for the horse. And I remember when I said I got to stop for the horse, and everybody, like, the whole stadium, there was 5,000 6,000 people, stood up, and everybody's applauding. In that moment, it was a very spiritual moment, because again, I had been feeling something all week and I didn't know what it was. But when all that happened in that split second, my body was like, this is what was supposed to happen. And so I absolutely broke down, and I was sobbing like a baby. I was crying. And I remember the judges came over, and they all took their hats off, and, out of respect. And my assistant at the time came over, and she hugged me. And I remember leaving the Coliseum, and you would have thought somebody died, because the gate opened up, and on both sides there was like 6 or 7 guys from the 4 6s, and 6 or 7 guys on this side. So they all have their red shirts on, and there's a path leading out of the arena, and all 12, 13 guys take off their hats with the 4 6s brand on their shirts, and they're crying, and I'm walking out, and each one of them shaking my hand. And for the 4 6s guys to do that is like a form of, obviously, of respect,
Mhm.
of respect for them to do that. And so for me, I started bawling even more when I saw those guys, bawling. And it was such a crazy moment. And then at the end of the competition, people could come and say hi to the competitors. And I remember the line was around the Coliseum for people wanting to see me versus the person that had won the competition. And so it was crazy to think that you would have thought that we had won the competition based off of the
Mhm.
reaction, the crowd reaction, the way it all went. And in my mind, I was like, this to me was more of an important message than saying, oh, he won. It was like, no, he did this for the horse. Like, he did that for the horse. And so for me, it was cool to be on that stage with that much money on the line in front of that many people, um, being ahead. And I think some of the judges came up to me afterwards and said, if I would have just gone through the obstacle course and had the horse look at the obstacles and kind of attempt them, that I was so far ahead that I still would have won.
Oh
And in
yeah.
my head, me being me, in my head, the way I compete, I knew the scoring system, and I think they said that I was so far the only person, and people can fact check me, but I was told by the judges and one of the directors that even up to now, I was the only person in Road to the Horse history to have a perfect score in the round pen on the final round of the whole competition. So everything
Oh,
that I
that's
did,
pretty cool.
and so that was pretty validating, and that was something that to me I just kind of, this is actually the first time I've talked about it. Um, was really cool to say, like, man, like, even though I didn't win, the things I was doing in the program were correct for the horse. And at the end of the day, if I was at home, that's exactly what I would have done with that horse. I would have hopped off that horse, gave it that time it needed to just relax and pick back up a little bit later or on a different day. And so it was cool for people to see that no matter what was happening, what was at stake, that someone was still willing to let it go and say, hey, I don't care. And I'd rather the horse be okay.
Hmm.
And I remember getting phone calls from people around the world saying, thank you for doing that. People from the dressage world, people from the roping world, people I've never met before messaging me. And, there was a lot of people were like, hey, we want to interview the podcast for a podcast because of what happened. And so it was, the, the things that came of it were a blessing, were incredible. You would have thought that we had won the competition based off of what happened, all the stuff
Yeah.
that happened after. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I remember that happening, like seeing the posts and stuff. I didn't know all the details, but that is something you've got to tip your hat to anyone who's willing to not just do right by the horse like on a random weekday when they're training at their barn, but they're in the middle of the arena. There's money on the line. Everyone's watching, all that stuff. To have the level of integrity to treat it the same all the time is definitely something you have to tip your hat to. So yeah,
I appreciate
that's really cool, man. That's really cool.
Thank
Um,
you.
kind of to wrap all this up, put a bow on things. I guess
Yeah.
if anyone wants to look up the program you're building now or wants to get a hold of you, I assume you're maybe buying some or selling some yearlings or weanlings or whatever too. Like anything about the program, how do they look you up now?
So there's a couple ways. There's a few different ways actually. You can look me up on Facebook or on social media. It's JR Horse Training. Or you can look up Clover Oak Ranch, which is the ranch that I'm training out of, that we're running now. And so either one of those, you can message me on any social media platform. You can, if you type in JR Horse Training, my phone number pops up, so you can shoot me a message, call me. But the easiest way is if you reach out to us on social media, I'll get back to you on there.
Awesome. Awesome. And we kind of covered it already, but as far as your goals going forward, it sounds like it's Clover Oak Ranch, building that program,
Yeah,
building your deal, and maybe attracting a wife in the future if that's in the cards. I've
maybe.
I've been to those NRHA deals. There's plenty of cute girls running around, man. So
My head's always like, I have to be here because I know that
yeah,
distractions are always bad. But there are some incredible people in NRHA, and I'd be cool to um, be able to go down that path, and someday soon, or whether it be now or later, find somebody to be able to share all this with would be awesome. And as far as goals go, uh, it's going to be the next few years. I don't know what they're going to hold, because the last few years I didn't expect any of this to be happening. So I'm just going to keep working my butt off. keep having positive people around me, keep doing my job, keep trying to be a good person, um, and trying to spread a positive message on social media. Um, I think for people, young trainers, if I had to give some sort of advice for a young trainer wanting to get into this industry, completely honest and transparent, is it's not easy. It's not for everybody. I do think it's an incredible life, an incredible lifestyle. You get to meet some incredible people. But I think that you have to have uh, really tough skin in order to be able to think longevity in this industry. Tough skin and a good work ethic, and I think those are the things that, and treat this like a business. Don't treat it like a hobby. I think those are some good pieces of advice that,
Amen.
me looking back, if I could give myself those pieces of advice, I would have given myself those pieces of advice sooner, especially the tough skin thing. Like I definitely think that that's one that it isn't talked about enough. But people are going to say stuff, people are going to whatever. But I think if I could motivate people to say, hey, I built this from nothing. 14 and a half years ago, I didn't know what a halter was. I didn't know what a mare was. To now, where I'm competing against some of the best horsemen in the world, and have a really cool team, and traveling. And I think the plan is to next year. I'm supposed to be traveling out of the country. I'm supposed to be giving. It was supposed to happen this year, but I'm supposed to be giving a clinic in Australia next year. And so I think that's another thing that's been on my bucket list, is to travel out of the country to give a clinic. And so I think that'll be
Heck yeah.
something for next year. And so, yeah, honestly, man, just telling people to keep following their dream, and ask questions. I think that's something that people don't do enough, and I think people are too quick to talk and not quick enough to listen. I think that's something with people, not just the younger generation, but just people in general, is they're always talking just to talk, and talking to be able to reply, instead of talking to actually listen and get advice. And for me, my life was a little different because I didn't work for anybody. But if you have an opportunity as a young trainer to go ride with somebody, someone that you admire, someone that you look up to, that would be my advice: is any chance you get at a show, even if you feel dumb, even if you're embarrassed to go up to somebody, if you have a question about something, ask. And when you get an opportunity to talk with somebody that's up in the horse world, don't just talk about horses. Don't ask them just about the business side of it. Ask them about assistants. Ask them about clients. Ask them about everything that you could think of when it comes to horses. Don't just talk about the horse side of it, because I think that tunnel vision will limit you to how far you can get. So make
Yeah.
sure when you get a chance to talk to somebody, pick their brain about absolutely everything, and even something that you think might not have any relevance to the business side of it or to the horse side of it. It all ties in together. So ask questions and really make sure you're listening, and be coachable. I think that's the other thing, is being a good student of the horse is another big thing. So those are things that I would definitely advise somebody getting into the horse world, and not be afraid to look dumb and on social media or in front of judges, like it happens to everybody. So I think that's just a part of it. So just be ready for those moments, and stay positive. Try to stay positive, and just keep working your butt off. That's my advice.
There you go. Yeah. You wrapped up the show better than I could, man. That was like that was like 8 nuggets of life advice to end the show.
I appreciate that.
Perfect, man. Well, I really do appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to visit with me, man. It's been really cool. Like I said, I've seen you from afar for a long time, so it's cool to hear the whole story now.
Yeah.
Don't don't hang up, but we are going to stop recording. As for everyone listening, we'll catch you in a couple weeks. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you.